Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully it worked. You should hopefully have been redirected over from the previous live stream. For anyone who missed it, I just covered the latest out of Ada County. We had the state asking for more help, basically, first thing. And then we also had the order on all the death penalty motions. Judge Stickler flatly denied all of them, which there were some surprising bits in there, such as his the way he handled the motion to trifurcate. And I pointed it out in the live stream. He rolled with he actually rolled with at least two logical fallacies simultaneously as he denied the motion, which was interesting to see. Anyway, it's interesting. So do check that out after the stream if you guys missed it. And, eventually I'll have it all timestamped. It was not a long stream, but I do think there were some important points made there, and some interesting things that came out. So happy to see all you guys that are here. Interesting. I was going back and listening to Ezra. Interesting. Have fun with that. Shout out to Flash Fan. Glad you're here. Okay, so on the screen right now, we've got this. This is what we've been going over previously, this Orange County Sheriff's Investigative Report. And for anyone who didn't see it, I have subsequently color-coded it. And now we've gone through the whole document and it's color-coded. And I need to add on here another category, which was, well, I have to go through and figure out if I want to do another one with it all highlighting all the exculpatory evidence. The problem is there's so much of it that it would be a lot to do. But what I wanted to show you guys is this in case you missed it. That here. All right. So several items collected from the defendant's vehicle were submitted to the Federal Bureau, FBI, right, and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Dr. Voss, right, who we heard from just recently, the evidence indicated that there was a decompositional event in the defendant's car. That's factually not correct. Furthermore, hair found in the defendant's car showed sign, also factually not correct. A synopsis of each listed before. So here's the craziest bit. Dr. Michael Sigmund. And I said to myself, it's weird because I'm like, his name has come up and we know how Dr. Voss got involved in this case was through Dr. Michael Sigmund. And I'm like, why have we not heard from him? I assumed we would hear from him and Dr. Voss back to back. And I was like, why have we not heard from him? You'll see why here in a second. Dr. Michael Sigmund is a chemist at the University of Central Florida. He was recommended to us by Dr. Voss at the onset and before Dr. Voss's involvement. So they hired, the state hired Dr. Michael Sigmund first to do the stupid air samples, to test the air samples. They hired Dr. Sigmund to test the air samples of the trunk. So you might say, well, then A, how come he hasn't testified? And B, how come they ended up going with why did Dr. Voss get involved? Here's why. Dr. Sigmund could not conclusively demonstrate that human decomposition was previously present in the trunk of the defendant's car. And as I mentioned in the other live stream when I read this for the first time, I was like, so how? Because not only is there no connection to anybody had anything to do with any body being in the trunk, this is exculpatory as to the fact that there wasn't ever a human decomposing in that trunk. That is correct. And what does the state do? They hire Dr. Voss to test it again. Now they use the same exact process, the same equipment. They are colleagues, they're buddies. And so then Dr. Voss does the same thing. And what's his result? Now, I find it interesting that they don't say it in this report that the reason that they hired him is because no human decomposition from Dr. Sigmund. Incredible. And what does Dr. Voss find? This is the best they could do. After finding another expert, the best they could do is this. Dr. Voss concluded that a portion of the total odor signature identified in the Florida vehicle trunk is consistent with a decompositional event that could be of human origin. Incredible. And so now the state's like, yep, there was definitely a body in that trunk, blah, 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 blah. It blows my mind because the languaging here, not only is it just a portion of the samples, but the portion that he's relying on could be. And that's after this. Incredible. So I wanted to point that out. So my thought is that that the defense will call Michael Sigmund. That's my guess. We'll see. But that's why the state didn't call him. Incredible. So, but the other thing, so in the part 3 of when I was covering these, I was referencing, we talked a lot about how what you can see here in this document, and you see it in the trial, is that the state has all these different theories, conflicting theories of potential motive for the murder. Right now, they don't have to prove motive, but the jury's going to want motive in this case. They usually do. And they've been trying to throw out bits and pieces, and it's been a mess, and none of it makes sense, and all of it is contradictory of itself, right, of each other. And so there's a lot of that. We saw other indications as to where they got those ideas in this investigative report, because there's a lot in this report that hasn't come in at trial. I don't know if it will or if it won't, but it hasn't come in yet. And we heard from a lot of new people, new characters. But there was a point in the live stream on part 3 where I was like trying to remember. I was like, wasn't there a part that came up in the trial at some point about an elimination murder, and the judge like flat out laughs at the state? And I said in the live stream, I said, I'm going to try to find that clip and play it. And I found it and I have it ready. So we're going to watch this clip that just shows the state grasping at straws and trying to go with a completely other idea of the motive. And it's really silly. So let's take a look.
Mario, I'm coming over. Miss Anthony, are you? Yeah. Mr. Lazario, after lab, yeah. Miss Anthony, how fuck? Mr. Lazario, to say hello. And the next one, Miss Anthony, on a few more days, and you can bring your ass over here anytime you want and stay whenever you want. Mr. Lazario, well, I'm coming over tonight. Miss Anthony, you are trouble. You know that. Yep. That's the portion you're talking about?
He's like, why?
Your Honor, the state wants to...
Y'all, his face says it all right there. That face, I'm going to take a screenshot. That is a priceless... He's like, you got to be fucking kidding me. You guys think that this can come in? How can this come in? Like, what the heck? Oh my God. This is so funny. I mean, yeah.
Introduce or would seek to introduce 10:38:27 p.m. through the defendant's response at 10:39:42. It establishes the fact that Mr. Lazario would like to come over. It establishes Ms. Anthony's putting him off, saying he can't, and it helps establish the fact that the reason that she can't do what she would like to do and can't have him come over whenever he wants to come over is because the child and her parents are in the way. That's why it's relevant.
Does the defense concur with that analogy?
My God. I'm going to leave the line.
Absolutely not, Judge.
Oh, man.
And that's the basis that you want to have that admitted.
Certainly, a jury, that's the conclusion that they can come up, that they can end with.
Okay. And what does that tend to prove or disprove?
In essence, one of the motive for the murder.
I take it Miss Anthony is living at home at that time, Mr. George?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying just because she's living at home with her parents and because she's told no, that's a motive for murder?
I'm sorry, sir. I missed that last part.
You're saying that because she's living at home and with her daughter in her parents' home, and because she says no, that's a motive for murder?
No, Your Honor. As the evidence, as some of the testimony has already been established from Mr. Lazaro, when they first started to date, the defendant had Caylee with her.
Oh boy.
The defendant was unable to do what she wanted to do, to stay where she wanted to stay, because she had to bring Caylee back home. As the weeks went on, culminating up to June 16th, what this helps represent and show was that she was locked in that home. She was locked, or at least held back, by her daughter. She couldn't do what she wanted to do, which is further evidenced by everything that she did do and everything that she wanted to do from June 16th until July 15th.
Wow.
That is why it's relevant, and it does help establish the motive. Because after June 16th, she didn't have to worry about her parents. She didn't have to worry about her daughter.
The next logical question is, why didn't she kill her parents?
Right.
Since everybody was in the way, but you don't need to answer that. So, section 90.403 of the Florida Evidence Code, exclusion on grounds of prejudice or confusion.
Did you guys see Mr. Baez laughing?
The court will make the following ruling. One,
Not coming in.
that is not relevant or material to any of the issues to be proved.
Definitely not.
And even if it was relevant and material, it is outweighed by the prejudice that it would cause in this. So that portion will not come in along with the rest of the portions.
Okay, that's where that ends. So that's the state trying to suggest that it should have been an elimination murder. So hilarious, right? So yeah, by the way, I don't know what's going on with StreamYard. You guys have seen this, I'm sure, from other channels, that StreamYard's been having myriad issues. The most recent one that they've been having, besides the audio glitching randomly, which it just does every now and again, is with these video files, it'll just like freeze and it's random. And it doesn't seem to do that when I'm, sharing a screen and reading, pulling something up that way, like, reading a document or whatever. It seems to be with the video files. It's a StreamYard issue. And so it seems to fix it when I just open up a new tab. I don't know why. But in case sometimes it's just the video might freeze, or it might be video and audio. In case it does that, just know it's not the stream. It's not the feed itself. It's not the stream itself. It's a glitch on StreamYard's end with like the video file, but it will self-correct. And I, apologize if it does that, but it is what it is. I was hoping it would be fixed by now, but and it's not the internet. It's StreamYard. It's StreamYard. It's a glitch in the software. As it pertains to presenting video files, which is one of their key features, because it seems to happen only with that. Like if I present and I share screen, it doesn't seem to have that same issue. So just so you guys know, it's not going to be the feed or the stream or anything like that. It's just the video file on StreamYard's end. It's the software, but it'll correct itself at some point. And then if it does that, we can just go back and hear if we missed anything. So, okay. So next up, we're going to jump right on in to highlights from last time, or recap from last time, rather.
It's a house.
So when you refer to something as an alert, is that the dog's indication to you that they've detected the scent that they have been imprinted on and trained on?
A final trained alert is when he does, if you trained him to do a sit or you trained him to do a down at odor. An alert, I would define an alert as any body behavioral change that I recognize that he does when he is in odor and working the odor.
That's different than the final trained alert that you had mentioned?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The final trained alert is?
When he has worked to source and does his, We teach them to work to source.
So let me see if I understand. Once the
Oh my God.
dog detects the odor, as the handler who has trained with the dog,
How is she still struggling with this concept? She's like, let me see if I understand. Ma'am, he has explained this 50 times over almost.
you can see that there's a behavioral change.
Absolutely. And we bought Garus from one of our vendors that we use to purchase our dogs from.
So did Garus come from Germany?
Yes, he did. He was imported. I believe he'd been here roughly 4 or 5 days when I got him.
Was he a puppy?
Oh my God.
No,
This lady. Okay.
How old was he?
he was, I believe he was 20 months, 21 months, something like
Was
that.
he a puppy? Yeah, I'm gonna use a puppy. Like, why would he have a puppy as?
I know his birthday was October 20th.
What are we seeing here?
Final trained alert.
Cute. Good boy.
And 140
You can tell he's proud. It's
Would like to
so cute.
find the odor, work the source, give me a final trained alert, and then turn and look at me and make eye contact with me. He always has. And this is him.
Well, Garus, you joined us just in time for so cute. I have it paused. This is great. We can just pause and look at Garus for a second. Look at how cute. Look what a good boy. What a good boy. And look at how happy and how proud. Oh my God. I love it so much. He's like, I found it. And then he lays down. That's his alert. And he's all perked up. And then he always does this. He lays down and then he turns and looks at you for approval. It's just so freaking cute. I love it so much. But yeah. So that's what we're looking at now.
Because those photos were actually taken in sequence. When he was working the odor, he gave his final trained alert, looking at the odor, and then turned and looked at me for acknowledgement.
Is this photograph to show the type of reward that he gets?
Yes, that was a ball. Handler praise and a ball. That's
Oh my
his
God.
reward.
One of the real
How cute is that? Handler praise in a ball and him playing with his ball. I can't. It's just too cute. So Flashman saying I should find out if I get my new job today. Oh, that is interesting. Well, I guess some jobs could call and say if you didn't get it. I feel like that's polite to do. But best of luck to you. If this stream is still going, let us know what happens, and hopefully you'll get your new job. That's awesome.
scenarios that you've described was actually captured on videotape.
Yes, ma'am.
Which one?
That was the first one, the female in 2006. I told him I'd come over and try and help him in any way I could. The helicopter searched again, saw that I had arrived, and called me on an off channel. They said they were leaving again, but please be aware that there was a large alligator in the pond in the area that I was just going out there. So I asked them to remain in the area if they would, to watch the alligator while I searched.
All right.
Shout out to the alligator.
Was this in the evening hours? Was it dark out?
Yes, it was dark.
And so the reason why this ended up being captured by the sheriff's office helicopter is because there was an alligator in the area.
Correct.
All right. There's a reason she's asking that question. We're about to see this video. There's a reason she's asking that question, because she's trying to show that the only reason it was filmed, right, was because there was an alligator. Why is she asking that? It's going to blow y'all's mind. They don't have a practice at this juncture. They probably do now. I'd be shocked if they don't now. But this is 2008, right, at the time when this was happening. They did not use body cams. They had them available. Okay, let me make it clear. They have video equipment available. They have audio. They have all this equipment available. They did not take videos or pictures or body cam or anything of any of the searches as it relates to this case. And there were over 71. And including even when remains were found and whatnot. No, they didn't. So it's only up to the report as to what the dog did or didn't do, or what the handler did or didn't do. There's no video of any of it. And this is going to come up, but she's trying to get out ahead in a way of saying like, oh, this is the only reason you filmed it. Now, if I was on this jury, I'd be like, that just because that's the only reason you film, like, that's not good enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you should be filming it. It shouldn't only be because there was an alligator. Like, you know what I mean?
Would object. Received no prior disclosure on this at all. May we approach?
You may. 12 individuals at some point in time will go back to a jury room, and they will be asked to evaluate the believability of this testimony. And one of the things that this jury is going to have to decide is whether or not this particular canine or any other canine is reliable.
They're definitely cute.
So the reliability, the dog's training and certificates, the handler's training and certification, the experience and training of the dog all goes to factors that will enable the trier of fact to determine whether or not they want to accept or reject this evidence. Therefore, my previous ruling will stand. Let's return to jury.
I mean, I disagree, because here's the thing. The examples he just gave were the canine's training and certificates and the handler's training and certificates. All that's already come in. That makes sense. All that's already come in. What he just said to me completely skirts what the issue Mr. Baez raised was. The training certificates and all that already came in. Pictures of the training already came in, all this stuff. What is about to come in is a video of a search for something completely different, right? A real world search or whatever, that they just happen to have the helicopter filming because of the alligator that was in somewhere no one knew where it was or whatever, for safety's sake. And they just happen to have it on camera. But that's extraneous to the examples that he just even gave, Judge Belvin just gave. So anyway, so the reason I included that is because there was a longer discussion about this video coming in. And it's funny because as I was going over those documents in the previous live stream about Idaho, and I was saying sometimes the legal argument that you make is because it's the best legal argument you can make, but it's not the reason you're making it. Okay. It's the same thing here, but I didn't realize this until I was going back and doing the timestamp. So what happened was I realized I was wondering what was the deal with this video and why is it such a point of contention? And when I was doing the timestamps, I realized what it was. So the reason that the state wants to play this video and the reason that the defense doesn't want them to play this video are not for any of the reasons that they say out loud. They don't say the reasons. The reasons became clear when you get later on to cross-examination of this witness and you get into certain things about Garus's behaviors. And so the reason, and so, well, I'll leave it at that. And I'll point out, we'll see it in a second. They're going to play the video. I'll point out exactly what the reason is here in a second.
You know where this body.
You know, the other thing that's weird is that they didn't, like, for both him and then the next witness, who is one of the other canine handlers, they don't have videos or photographs of the actual search for in this case. Like, it's not, you know, like these days everything's on body cam, right? Apparently that wasn't a thing back then. And I don't know if they just didn't have the technology or what, but like we don't have any body cam footage. But anyway, if ever you would want that when it comes to, you know, well, it's always important, right? But especially when you've got the canine searches, right? Because what they're going to do is they're going to put up a picture and have the witness on the stand point to where the dog was alerting and like circle it with the telestrator. But like, you can't tell from a picture, right? It's two-dimensional. And it's very different than seeing the dog actually alert, especially if you're going through all the trouble of showing the jury how the dog alerts, what their signals are, what it looks like when they have a scent, right? We're already learning so much about their behavior and whatnot. And then, of course, there's the other factor of whether or not the handler is cueing them or not, because they're not supposed to be doing that. And so when it comes to like what Judge Bell was just saying and the prior fact and whatnot, like if you're going to show them any footage of them doing an actual real world search, shouldn't it be the search in this case? Okay. Cute. It's hard to see at first. There's the body. Oh, there's the person. And there's, oh, you guys can't see my mouse, but Garus is up there on the left-hand side. There he is. better now. But watch what happens here. This is why, we're going to get to in a second, the reason why the state wanted to play this video and the reason the defense wanted it to be out. So you'll notice where the body is, and you'll notice that Garus is not going any further to the body. And there he laid down and looks up at him and is doing his final trained alert. So the point is that they're going to get into is the fact that Garus wasn't being allowed to go further towards the body, according to the handler. The handler was pulling back on the leash and wouldn't let him go any further towards the body, and so that's why he did an alert there. This is going to come up.
So when you're out of the woods, so to speak, what is it that you can tell us about what Garus was doing on this video to pick up the scent and then ultimately whether or not he gave an alert?
He's working the source. I know he's working odor. He's definitely bringing me to it. And he's bracketing to get to it. I was having to slow him down. If you saw when he would stop, when he stopped immediately, it's because I held the lead because I didn't know where the water was because it was, pitch black down there. I called the unit that was on scene. I said,
so that's going to come up on cross.
Does it look real or does it look like an animal? And they stated that it looked real.
It is your thing.
State?
Your Honor, these are the circumstances of his real world.
The fact that he even gives them a chance, that should have just been sustained. It's hearsay.
Find they're relevant to whether or not we
No. I'm sorry, relevance is not an exception to hearsay.
meet the predicate involving bones.
Objection overruled.
Not surprising though, like the rules it.
And that's when I discovered the vehicle was still in the bays. I asked them to move the vehicle outside.
Why?
Because in the forensic bay, there are other trash cans, biohazard trash cans where the unit that picks up our biohazard trash come and pick up. It's housed in the same warehouse on the other bay, the opposite bay.
So where did you ask that the individuals present move the car?
I asked them to remove the vehicle from the garage, the bays, and put it outside in the parking lot.
How was that to facilitate or improve Garus's search?
To put it in the open air, to remove it from the other biohazards that were in there, which are also, blood and other.
So this is going to come up again also. And this is another thing where I was like, why are they going on and on and on about this? And I realized why when I was doing the timestamps, because of the whole confusion about there have been being trash in the car. Think about all the other testimony that we've heard where they've said, yeah, like the components that were in the trash are also the components that you find in human decomposition, and the trash was in the car, right? So it's like, that's why there's this whole back and forth about, was it from the trash? Was it human decomposition? And the fact that like, even down to the very specific chemicals were found in the trash that was in the car, right? Now, you'll notice that he is saying that there was biological or whatever biohazards, okay? This is important. This matters. Language matters. He's saying there were biohazards in the forensics bay, okay? And why? Because the jury or anyone could interpret that, oh, well, I guess he must mean it's like human related, right? Biohazards, right? Doesn't have to be, but you could think that, right? And he's saying that's why we had to pull the car out of the forensics bay, because you would get Garus confused. Now, what's going to be so interesting is on cross, it's like, do you know that it was biohazards, or was it just trash from people eating their lunch? And why does it matter? Again, because if it's just trash, like random trash that was in there, and he had to pull the car out so that Garus wouldn't get confused, what does that prove? It proves that trash must be able to, even if it's whatever the trash was, is similar enough to human decomposition that you need to get it away from other trash in order to let the dog alert on something. But you'll see, you guys will see, it's interesting.
Evidentiary stuff in the bays to put it in a clean area. We continued down the driver's side to the trunk area. When we turned down the side of the rear of the trunk was open. Garus jumped up into the trunk.
His whole body?
No, front end. Front end, stuck his head in there. And of course I was overwhelmed at that point because same thing, I'm hitting at the same time he is. I move around, continue to walk. Garus comes out of the trunk with his front paws, comes out of the trunk to the right rear passenger taillight bumper area and gives me a final trained alert. He goes into a down position.
Same day?
I believe it was the next day, I'm not sure. The Hope Spring address.
What request was made of you at the Hope Spring residence?
They asked me to come out and if I could do a sweep of the backyard.
All right. So you went there with Garus.
Yes.
Can you tell the members of the jury where the trained final alert occurred? You can tell us straight by touching.
Within that circle, in that area.
The questions of the witness at this point.
Okay. Cross-examination.
Hey, police court.
You may proceed.
Mr. Drane-Burdick. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Deputy Forgey.
Good afternoon.
When you went to first see the car, you were informed that the Pontiac Sunfire was the suspect's vehicle.
It was, I believe what he said was it was the vehicle in
What's
question.
the matter right here?
That would be the person who's either under arrest or the car is confiscated, right?
Problem.
Later knowing, I don't think she was under arrest at that point, but person of interest, suspects.
Yeah. So that's the problem. It's so
Now-
it's not.
When you brought out the car from the garage, you brought it
not
out because
reliable, right? If you already know which car is the car, you know it belongs to a suspect. You're going to bring the dog to that car. It's just it botches the whole thing. Yeah.
there was trash in the forensic bay area, right?
I don't know if I would classify it as trash. There was
So this is what I was just referencing about the trash.
other items in the forensic bay.
Now, you don't work there, do you?
I don't work at forensics now. I work at the sheriff's office.
In fact, you're not very familiar with the goings-ons in the forensic bay, are you?
You'd have to clarify that.
You're not too familiar with the forensic bay garage, are you?
In general, I have a little knowledge there, but do I work there in forensics? No, I do not.
Okay, so you don't know what trash was there, and that's why you asked to bring it out.
Correct.
You had a video of one of your finds. Did you videotape this find?
No, I did not.
Okay.
And that's exactly what I
Did
said.
you-
That's what I said. I was like, so we know that you can videotape them, but you didn't videotape this. It's just
You now have a video camera available.
why?
I'm sure there was one available.
Incredible.
But being as that you knew which car there was, you didn't think it would be advantageous to the jury or anyone to see if there were any cues that you were giving off to the dog?
That's exactly what I said.
If we could have predicted where we are today,
Oh, bad answer.
it would have been videotaped.
Sir?
But it's not a common practice thing to videotape your real searches.
What? What do you, okay, let's walk through that logically. They're saying if I could predict where we are today, what do you mean in trial? What do you expect when you're law enforcement? If you're a detective or if you're in law enforcement and you're working a murder case, shouldn't you expect, like, I don't understand. Like, you should be expecting, anyway. Like, it defies logic to not always have everything videotaped. And I know things are different now, thank goodness. But beyond that, even if you don't have that policy, if you're investigating a murder case, wouldn't that be the time though? Versus filming it when it's just like a practice run because there's an alligator maybe? But then that answer, to give that answer on the stand, that sounds terrible. If I were on a jury and I heard that answer, I'd be like, wow.
Going back to the search of the home, you were called after your alert or your dog full train alert in the backyard, CSI was called out there.
Sergeant Brewer was called first, and then the forensic CSI were called, yes.
And they then began to dig and search for remains in the backyard.
Like I've said before multiple times, it's not, I don't think they dug. I don't know for sure. I know what it appeared to be is what they scraped the surface, but I wasn't present.
They went looking.
Absolutely.
And they didn't find anything.
No, they did not.
And then they called you out the next day to come out.
Yes, sir.
And the next day you came out.
Yes, sir.
And tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what happened.
The next day, after they had done what they were doing, scraping the surface and moving the area, I did not get any alerts.
And you searched the
Guess
backyard.
what? The prosecution did not bring that in. They didn't tell the jury that.
And you didn't, and on one day you had an alert and the next day you didn't. You didn't do a report on that.
That's correct. If you know it's here and I'm looking for other missing items and missing bones, why would I want him to go there and alert? So I want to remove him from there. Was he alerting and trying to get there? Yes. Was I trying to keep him from that? Yes. Was I making him move and search because we figured it was pulled away, disarticulated by animals, which is common, and they'll obviously remove little bones away. So I wanted to search away from that area.
Do you recall giving a deposition in this case on November 29th, 2010, sir?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall being asked a question? He didn't give any alerts at all. And your response being, no, sir. Well, yes, he showed some interest. He showed interest, change of behavior, blah, blah, blah. He did give me his final. Did he give me his final alert? No, sir. Do you recall making that statement, sir?
Yes, I do. That's what I was just referring to and testifying to. Was he alerting? Yes. Did
I
he
don't
give
have
me
a pending
trial?
question, sir. Hold on.
The witness shall be permitted to finish his answer. You may finish your answer, sir.
Thank you, sir. What I was saying is, I testified and at the deposition that the dog was alerting to it, but he didn't give me a final trained alert. Like I explained earlier, he's trying to get the source.
Not
I
what he
didn't want
said
him
in
to
the
get the
deposition.
source. So he wasn't going to give me a final trained alert over there because I didn't want him to get to there.
Now, why
we
does
were
this
looking for
matter?
items.
Why does this matter? This is at the crime scene. This is at the crime scene when they have found the remains and his dog is not alerting.
That they hadn't found. I believe they're really small bones. I don't remember exactly if it was a toe or a finger or what it was, but they knew what they were missing. So I didn't want them to get there. So is that what I was referring to? Absolutely. He didn't.
That doesn't make any logical sense to me. So will someone, does that make any logical sense to anyone else? Like, I don't get
Give
it.
me a final trained alert because I wouldn't allow him to do that. I
But
kept
why would
moving
you do
him.
that? Isn't that his job? I don't
You were
know.
called out there to find human remains, were you not, sir?
The couple of missing bones.
That's human
Little
remains.
pieces, the missing bones.
You were called out there to find human remains.
Yep.
Sustain.
Would you consider that human remains? Bones?
Yes.
That is what you find.
You didn't find any human remains.
They've been recovered. I didn't find any. No, sir.
Oh boy.
Neither did your dog.
This is the
No,
match.
sir.
And your dog did not give a final train alert anywhere on Suburban Drive.
Correct. I would not allow him to give me a final trained alert or go to where the body was recovered.
You wouldn't allow him to help you find human
Yeah, that
remains.
makes no sense.
I wouldn't allow him to go to where the body was recovered. They had how many forensic people at that source filtering?
That is why the state wanted to play that alligator video, because it shows him holding the dog back. However, it doesn't matter if he held the dog back or not. The dog was not alerting, as we heard.
Yes, I knew if they had gone through
He's
it
gone.
as
Look at him.
well as they had done this whole.
Look at him. You remember in Debbie Heard, there was that time on Cross when Camille was finished with Amber and Amber just kept talking and Camille just walked off in the middle of her some of her answer and it was like, yes, oh my God, it was so epic. She just walks off. And then there's in Karen Reed, I remember there were a couple of times where actually I have a clip of it. Instead of me doing an impression, let's hear the real thing. Where Mr. Yannetti, I love this. Check it out. He would say this. Where is it?
We're done here.
We're done here. And see, the thing is that Mr. Baez is he's very professional and polite. So he's not walked off yet, but he's packed up his big binder. Let's watch this again. That's my thought. My thought was like, yep, you can sit down. But he's like, he like doesn't want to be rude, but at the same time, it's like, yes, you can sit down. I want to watch this part again. This is epic. This is so epic, the way he's floundering, not like trying to evade the question, to say that human bones are not human remains, and the fact that that's a huge deal, right? Garus did not give a final alert on Suburban Drive.
No, sir.
And your dog did not give a final train alert anywhere on Suburban Drive.
Correct. I would not allow him to give me a final trained alert or go to where the body was recovered.
You wouldn't allow him to help you find human remains.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
I wouldn't allow him to go to where the body was recovered. They had how many forensic people at that source
See, now he's just making excuses, and he's going to pull up his binder like he's going to walk off.
filtering it? So I knew if they had gone through it as well as they had done this whole area, that it wasn't there. They had already sifted that area. He was going there because of the odor. I didn't want him. I wanted them to find what had been removed, so we could have
He's
a
done.
complete body.
And he didn't find.
Not. See, the thing about this prosecution in this case is they don't get out ahead of anything. Like he's been on the stand for like 3 hours or something crazy, right? Like on direct. And then here we are on cross. Cross is like 15 minutes. And he just obliterates him with stuff that they didn't get out ahead of. Now, I don't know how much it would have helped. It would have helped some, but this has been witness after witness after witness after witness. The prosecution doesn't get out ahead of these things. And then he comes in on cross, and rightfully so. And now that's it.
Whatever
I
items were removed.
the 2, 3, 4 missing bones. No, sir.
So you don't know exactly how many missing bones there were.
No, sir. I remember it was a very minute number.
And you don't find yourself qualified to testify to that fact, do you, sir?
They told me that there was a couple bones missing.
You don't. My question to you is, you don't know exactly how many there were.
Could I tell you if there was 10 or 3? No, but they told me there was a very small number.
But that's certainly something you chose to volunteer.
I'm sorry?
That's certainly something you chose to volunteer.
Because I believe it was.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Here's what that was about. I love it when it pauses like that. Here's what that was about. So he was about to walk off. Forgey kept talking. Oh boy. Forgey kept talking. He's trying to make excuses, right? For why the hell he didn't, right? Because he's saying, well, it wasn't the dog's fault, which I agree. It's never the dog's fault, right? He's like, I wouldn't let him give his final alert because I didn't want him to interfere. It's like, so then he just keeps talking, right? He was going to sit down. Mr. Bias was going to sit down. He just keeps talking. He's digging himself a deeper hole. And he's like, I didn't want him to interfere because they were still looking for more bones, right? So there were still bones missing. See, Mr. Baez knows all this is bullshit. And that's why he asks those questions, because this is going to come up again. This is going to come up again. And he says, and you just volunteered that information, that there were other bones missing. This is going to come up. Wow, what a good cross. Incredible.
Okay, Forgey.
I mean, that cross is brilliant because he starts out, with the point that I made, you filmed the other things, but you didn't film what matters. You didn't film any of this, right? And then again, the fact that he knew the vehicle belonged to the suspect ahead of time, that shows handler bias, right? Didn't film any of this. And then all these other issues from the other statements you'd made that you know, in the deposition, you said something different. He impeached him a couple times on that for like false alerts and whatnot. And then getting to the actual case here at hand, you know, he didn't actually make a final alert. I mean, done. And you know what, 15 minutes? Incredible.
Whatever the dog was alerting on was on the surface. And with them scraping the area and disturbing it,
Oh, really?
it was moved or diminished.
Great.
Where the dog wouldn't find it. It was gone at that point. But if something was on the surface that they had scraped, I clearly believe that's exactly what happened. That's why we didn't get anything the next day.
So he's He's blaming the forensic people for scraping the surface of the soil and saying it spread the smell out. No, I don't think so.
And when trying to interpret what a dog is doing or saying, speculation, is it not?
Speculation on my training experience with the dog, absolutely it is. That's part of my job. And prior to being a canine handler, I worked the road and worked many of deceased people calls, dead unattended. And so that would be without my dog.
They've never asked you to come out instead of the dog.
Oh, no, they have not. No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy be excused.
That's funny.
Prior to the arrival of Bones at the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, did you
So this is interesting. So you watched the Shauna. When was that? I didn't see that. Interesting.
yourself do any training?
Yes, ma'am. It was kind of a hobby for me to train dogs in protection, obedience, and article tracking.
I missed your answer. Can you repeat
You weren't listening.
that for me, please?
I did canine training as kind of a hobby, which was protection,
I heard the answer.
obedience, and article tracking.
All right. Independent of your position with the Osceola County Sheriff.
That's correct.
And what does that stand for?
It's National Narcotic Detector Dog Association, but it has a branch for cadaver certification.
Irrelevant in this case.
This is, as the name implies, a national group that certifies specialty dogs in all disciplines.
I believe.
Incredible. What is wrong with her? As the name implies, the name was narcotics.
She's so stupid.
Proves my point. Guys, like what I said, she doesn't listen. Let's listen again to this. This is insanity to me. What is happening? And that's leading.
And what does that stand for?
It's National Narcotic Detector Dog Association, but it has a branch for cadaver.
National Narcotic Dog Association. Then she says it has a branch for cadaver, but the association, NNDA, National Narcotic Dog Association. Now let's listen to what she says next.
Certifications.
All right. This is, as the name implies, a national group that certifies specialty dogs in all disciplines.
Ugh. This witness must be so confused. Because how? I just don't understand. Like, what are you even doing if you're not listening to the answer? Not to mention it, she has this information in front of her on a report or on a sheet. She has this information and she just got the answer. Okay.
I believe. I know cadaver and narcotics. I'm not sure about bomb work.
The thing is that even if she had said, okay, this is NNDA, and what does that stand for? National, let's change it. Let's change it to NEDA. What does it stand for? National Everything Dog Association. Even if that's what she had said, the question still would have been dumb. If she had said, and as the name implies, it means everything, that still would have been a dumb question. But it's even worse when it just completely disregards the answer, and the answer was very specific.
Are those the NND? You'll have to repeat that for me.
You'll have to repeat that for me. I heard it once and I got it. Not only did she say an NDA, she said an NDA, then she said a National Narcotics Dog Association, then she asked that dumbass question about, does that mean it does everything? Then she said it again. I believe narcotics, and it has a branch for cadaver. And then she says, and then you'll have to repeat that again for me. It's making me want to lose my mind.
What sort of reward, if any, is Bones given when he makes a successful find?
Tennis ball.
Cute.
Is he ever rewarded with food?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
Because he's given food or treats just as for being a dog. So his favorite reward is his tennis ball.
He's given food or treats for being a dog. Accurate. Yes. A+ for that.
If you would explain to the members of the jury what you did with Bones on July 17th of 2008.
He immediately did a quick search of the yard. He went around where there was a swimming pool, and then he went back towards the screened-in porch. He checked a couple corners of the area. His nose was down. He spent approximately 3 to 4 minutes searching in the backyard. I saw that there was an area of interest that he kept going back to and sniffing pretty hard. He finally came back to that same area after making another lap of the yard and gave a final trained indication in one location in the backyard.
Okay. What indication was given?
He sat.
This is the trained final alert that you described earlier.
Yes.
The monitor in front of you is a telestrator. Can you indicate to the members of the jury where you got the trained final alert?
So Bones successfully got a final alert. So this is
Basically
again,
in that area right there.
confusion, right? About was there a body in the yard? Was there not a body in the yard? We have got two different dogs with two different answers.
Do you return the next day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you return the next day, had it become apparent to you that the surface had been disturbed in some fashion?
Yes.
Did you run Bones through the same process on that date?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what result did you receive then?
No alerts.
Okay. Do you have some opinion as to why that occurred on day 2?
Whatever he was alerting to.
So it's really funny that the prosecution with this witness, she did ask that question because she didn't ask that question of the first witness about how he didn't get an alert on the next day. But now she's like, oh, I guess I better do that. But I don't know why she didn't predict that with the first witness.
You could have been moved or destroyed or dissipated because of all the work that had been done. Or they may just not have dug enough to find what may have been below the surface.
Now, this is an area you circled where you had indicated your dog alerted to,
Yes.
correct? You also testified that Sergeant Forgey had informed you that his dog alerted 6 to 8 feet away from this.
Okay. So this is where there's a discrepancy. And this is really interesting. So where Deputy Forgey circled in the yard that his dog alerted and where she circled, they're the same places. Now that's in trial, right? However, at the time, contemporaneously to the time when this was happening, he told her that his dog alerted 6 to 8 feet away. So why is that important? Because he circled the same place she circled. So what this looks like to me is Deputy Forgey in trial changed his answer as to where the dog alerted. Because again, he told her his dog alerted 6 to 8 feet away from where she circled and where she said her dog alerted. But then in trial, he circled the same place. And that's going to become important.
Correct.
Where did he indicate to you that his dog had alerted?
He didn't show me specifically.
It couldn't have been 6 to 8 feet to the right, correct?
You'd have to, I can't.
Can you look at the photo there and see if there's anything that would block 6 to 8 feet in that direction?
It's not to scale without seeing it. I can't.
From your memory
I can't see
of the backyard, was the house that little house blocking 6 to 8 feet away?
it could have been.
Okay. Deputy Forgey didn't inform you that his dog went in the little house and alerted there, correct?
No.
Now, your understanding from where you were indicated, 6 to 8 feet would either be close to the sidewalk here, correct?
He didn't indicate which direction.
I know. I'm going to give you different possibilities. It could be closer to the sidewalk there, right? To the right? In this direction, correct?
It could be.
And it could also be this direction, correct?
Could be.
And that would be closer to the swimming pool?
Swimming pool.
I believe so. I'd have to see a photo to say for sure.
Your memory.
Brilliant. I didn't even see that coming. Close the 6 to 8 feet, because it could be in any direction, right? But it couldn't be in the direction of the playhouse because the playhouse would be in the way. And remember, I swear, the freaking prosecution has not shown us any pictures of the swimming pool, which is, like, what are you doing? It's mind-boggling. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, wow, right. Because they keep showing that picture of the backyard. Here, let me show it. Let me show this picture. It's one picture of the backyard that they keep showing, right? This is the one that's in evidence. Now, I'm sure the defense will more than likely admit, when it's their case in chief, other pictures, conveniently leaves out the swimming pool. This is the one that we keep seeing. This is the only one we keep seeing. Incredible. So the swimming pool is right to, if you're facing that blue circle, it's to the left of that, right? And they're just not showing it. It's so deceptive. It's like, so we don't have a reference point. So thank God for these questions, because what he's saying is 6 to 8 feet away, but we don't know what direction, or they're being evasive about what direction, right? But it can't be in the direction of the playhouse because that's blocking it. So if you go 6 to 8 feet the other direction, that's the swimming pool. And we wouldn't know that if it wasn't for that question, because of the fact that they have not shown us pictures of the full backyard, which includes the swimming pool, or just the swimming pool, period.
Your understanding from where you were indicated, 6 to 8 feet would either be close to the sidewalk here, correct?
If you go back 6 to 8 feet, you got a fence. If you go to the side, you got the playhouse.
Closer to the sidewalk there, right? To the right?
And the other one is the sidewalk. Yep.
In this direction, correct?
It could be.
And it could also be this direction, correct?
Could be.
And that would be closer to the swimming pool?
There.
I believe so. I'd have to say a photo to say for sure. I think the first arrow would have been
Right.
more.
Yeah, the thing went a little haywire on me at
It
the
went
end.
haywire on him. That's where the pool is. So now we know where the pool is, right? So like I said, it's like to the left-ish. It's to the side and to the left of that blue dot, right? But it's in that direction where you would expect it to be. So you can see exactly what he's getting at here.
Right in this direction, correct?
Yes.
Now, you never deployed.
About the pool. This is incredible because there's so much evidence that surrounding this pool. I mean, mostly from Cindy herself, right? But I guess circumstantial. But the dog alerting at the pool. Wow.
Do you have a title such as detective? I want to make sure I'm going to call you.
I just want to summarize that. So basically, at the time when they were searching, Deputy Forgey told her that his dog alerted 6 to 8 feet away from where her dog alerted. Her dog alerted where we saw that circle. And what he was trying to show is that the only possible way where that dog could have alerted 6 to 8 feet away has to be the swimming pool, because it couldn't have been to the back. That's where the fence is. Couldn't have been to the side. That's where the playhouse is. And it couldn't have been on the sidewalk, which is to the front. So the only other possible direction is the swimming pool. So what this means to me is at the time, Deputy Forgey's dog alerted at the swimming pool. But then when he came in and testified, he circled the same place on the picture as where she said her dog alerted. Now, why do you think that is, right? It's so gross. But that is interesting.
Right name. Detective Osborne.
Detective is fine.
Detective Osborne, as a result of your position.
That's what I was saying. It's like, how do you not know? And the way she asks this, she didn't just say, is there a title that you've reached, in your career? That would have been, but the way that she says, do you have a certain title? I want to make sure I call you the right name. Oh, God.
In the forensics unit with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, did you receive several items of evidence in connection with the investigation into the disappearance of Caylee Marie Anthony?
I did.
How is that not on her sheet?
Did the first item that was provided to you consist of a cell phone purported to belong to Caylee Marie Anthony?
Yes.
Are there forensic applications that you can use to determine the contents of a camera, or do you just scroll through it like I would?
I use a forensic tool to examine the camera.
All right. And what tool was used?
This detective is like, what type of dumbass question are you asking?
To examine the Nikon Coolpix.
I use a forensic software tool called Encase, made by Guidance Software.
There's a monitor. It looks like it's been turned. If you could just turn it to you. Well, it's in evidence.
Oh, God.
Turn it off as well.
Let's just...
May I publish the item to...
Let's just let the witness figure it out, because you don't know what... Dude, I swear.
The jury.
He's only an expert witness. Look at her fixing it.
You were asked to run searches for chloroform on Ricardo Morales'
And that
computer.
picture, remember, this came up in his testimony, that picture that he had sent to Casey on Instagram, and it was like, kill her with chloroform or win her over with chloroform or something like that. It was supposed to look like a glamorous perfume commercial.
And I think what he's going to be getting at is that she, you know, the infamous chloroform search, right, that she makes. I think what he's going to be getting at through these various different witnesses with the computer forensics and all that is I think he's going to show that search for chloroform first happened after he sent her that picture and she didn't know what it was. The way that changes this entire thing in terms of the public and the general consensus that, you know, because the people that are just like, she did it, blah, blah. Like if you were asked them like how Caylee died, they probably would say something about chloroform. Although we still haven't heard from the ME yet. Again, well, that'll be on the next episode. But, you know, because there's this whole thing about, because the chloroform was found in the trunk, and of course there's plenty of other explanations for that, as we heard, and because the search for chloroform, right? Oh, she searched for chloroform. It changes everything if you think, oh, after she got that picture from him, and I mean, we'll see what happens. He might even be able to show the timestamp that it was like immediately upon receipt she searched for it, right? Because she didn't know what it was. And the other thing, and I thought about this, was if you did a search for chloroform, and then later on you did a search for chlorine, for whatever reason, right? But you just type CHLOR, or that's what you intend, it could suggest chloroform. And as we know from all these other trials, sometimes that'll run in the background even if you don't click on it or search for it. So anyway, it's just funny. There's that similarity to CHLOR, you know, as the first four letters, but it's so crazy about this picture, right? So that's what he's about to ask her about, that picture from Ricardo. Get out the Elmo. So I left it then.
So I'm gonna pause real quick. Yeah, it's really awful. It is. That's exactly what it's like, not being able to get the names right, but also they're getting out the Elmo. How cute! Yay, Elmo! Yay, Elmo!
They're setting off the Elmo.
I'll show you what's been admitted into evidence as defense exhibit 1, or defense evidence 1.
No, Elmo.
Are you familiar with this photograph?
I'm sorry, you asked if I recognize this picture?
Yes.
I've seen it, yes.
Okay. And are you aware that this was posted on Ricardo Morales' MySpace account?
No, I'm not.
And I know you can only see one portion of it, but can you read to the ladies and gentlemen, or read into the record what it says?
Win her over with chloroform.
What do you see in the photograph?
What's depicted in the photograph is a couple, a man and a woman. A woman is sitting at the chair, apparently dining in a black evening gown. The man is looking over her shoulder with a white cloth in his hand, reaching around behind her shoulder.
I subsequently had an opportunity to attend a class put on by a gentleman by the name of John Bradley. He was teaching a class in the use of a internet history tool, CacheBack. This tool was able to compensate for the fact that this history record spanned.
So John Bradley, we are going to be hearing from him on the next one.
This length of time,
Which is this
and I utilized that in order to show the records a little bit more easily.
Someone is looking at a screen that says that mentions chloroform, and then 10 seconds later they're at MySpace.
So somebody did a search, a specific search for the term chloroform, and then subsequently went to a different website.
And that's the point, right? Because again, that picture from Ricardo with chloroform was on MySpace. So she might have seen it on MySpace and then looked it up because she didn't know what it was.
Which is MySpace.
That's correct. I've seen the photo.
Okay. Are you aware that that photo was on Ricardo Morales' MySpace page?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful.
May the sergeant be excused.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Sergeant. You may be excused, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so before we get into the next episode, I want to ask you guys, everyone who's watching, please, will you guys put in the chat? I'm so curious. What do you guys at this juncture, because we haven't heard from the medical people yet, what do you think Caylee's cause of death was? Or what do you think the state's theory of her cause of death was? Like where you're at right now, regardless of how much of this trial you've watched, even if you're just relying on what you knew at the time or whatever, what do you guys think was supposed to be her cause of death? Put it in the chat. I'm curious. And now we're getting into the Google searches. Woo!
My name is John Dennis Bradley, D-E-N-N-I-S for my middle name, B-R-A-D-L-E-Y for my last name.
Thank you.
Sir, how are you employed?
I'm self-employed.
In what capacity?
I'm the owner of SciQuest, a software development company.
And how long has that company been in existence?
Officially since 2001.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background, education, employment prior to the formation of the company?
I'm a former law enforcement officer in Ontario, Canada. I was employed with the Durham Regional Police Service from 1988 through to and including April 2006. I spent 10 years in uniform, and then I was transferred into the Major Crime Branch, where I led the Technological Crimes Unit. My background in training involves several courses at the Canadian Police College in relation to computer forensics. I attended the Canadian Police College for advanced investigator training, as well as professional training outside of the law enforcement community.
That takes us up through what year?
That spans up most of my career.
Anyone who's watching and missed the question, in case anyone's just joining us, put in the chat, if you will, guys, regardless of how much of the trial you've seen now or seen previously, put in the chat what you guys think was Caylee's cause of death, or what you think the state's theory was as to her cause of death. I'm curious.
In 2000, I was transferred to major crime. In the year 2005, after spending 5 years in that unit, conducting several investigations, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant, at which time I was transferred back to uniform in charge of a platoon of officers in another division. Following a 10-month period, approximately, I left law enforcement and took up a position with the Scotiabank as a director in charge of technological crimes and investigations. All during this time, I had started a software development company in 2001 under a different name. At that time, I believe it was called Armor Data, and it was in a purpose to distribute software that I had begun developing while I was a police officer. And at the time that I was now with the Scotiabank, I found that banking was not of interest for me, and it didn't fulfill my desires to further my abilities in the computer forensic industry. So I quit the banking field, and I subcontracted for a couple of months doing computer forensic investigations involved in criminal defense, criminal prosecution, and litigation. And after about 2 or 3 months, I decided to form a full-time business. I renamed Armor Data, which was a part-time business, to a full-time.
So we've got one vote for chloroform. And there's a reason I'm asking this, because I think it'll be the next episode or maybe the one after that, this is going to come up. And because I heard this as I was editing, and I was like, holy shit, what? That's why I'm curious, because chloroform was my impression as well. And I think that's why I'm curious if that was like what everybody thought, right? Was that the general consensus, was that it was chloroform, regardless of who, right? I agree with you. I don't think Anthony did either. I think that's clear. But regardless of who you think did it, even if you think she did it or whatever, do you guys think chloroform was the mechanism, the cause of death? That's what I'm curious about, or something else.
Business conducting primarily computer forensic services for litigation purposes, and a smaller focus on the software development, which was continual throughout that whole period.
And also, I'll just add real quick, just remember too, at this point, we haven't heard from the medical examiner's office yet, right? It could be that she drowned, right? However, that wouldn't be the state's theory, right? So that would still be in the mixes in terms of possible things, but in terms of I guess what I'm specifically getting at is what you think the state is trying to show. Candace thought it was being smothered. Interesting. Smothered by anything in particular? This is great. I'm really curious. And the fact that people don't know, and that there's mixed, like, that just goes to show you, right? Just like with like the potential motive, clearly that says something too about their case, right? That as famous as this case was, and as notorious as it was, we didn't really seem to hear a whole lot, right, about how she died. And so, but we heard about chloroform searches, which is probably why a lot of people thought chloroform was the cause of death. It'll be really interesting to see when we get into this testimony from the forensic pathologist. But that's why I wanted to ask these questions ahead of time,
before we get into that about what you guys thought the cause of death was. So thank you guys for answering the question. I love it.
Approximately 2 years ago, the increase in demand for my software actually made me change the focus of the company to do about 95% software development and training in the field of computer forensics and 5% on actual professional services.
Interesting, Candace.
In connection with your employment as a police officer in Canada, did you ever have the opportunity to
Interesting answer, Candace, because of the tape. Okay, good answer, good. So we'll keep that in our minds as we go forward and we get into the meta. But anyone else that's listening, please let me know what you thought.
testify as an expert witness in the field of computer forensics?
Yes, I have.
Okay. In what jurisdictions besides those in Canada?
It would be the only ones I testified were within Ontario, Canada.
Okay. In connection with your
Canada.
company, have you had the opportunity to testify as an expert witness?
Yes, I have. On a criminal defense case in the city of Toronto. That was approximately 2 years ago.
Your Honor, at this point, I would tender the witness for voir dire or submit as an expert in the field of computer forensics.
No objection, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the witness will be accepted as an expert witness in forensic computer analysis. You may continue.
What sort of software have you developed that allows the interpretation of internet search history?
I have a product called CacheBack right now. Its main focus is for the analysis of internet cache and history and cookies in relation to the browsers commonly used today by people to surf the internet.
Okay. Can you give us an explanation of what the cache is?
The cache is spelled C-A-C-H-E, which is a play on terms. It's stored or hidden copies of information when you're actively on the internet. The internet cache is a temporary folder or series of folders, ideally, to store information to make it easier and faster to navigate the internet so that the browser can look to the cache to see if it can fulfill a request much more quickly than having to go back out onto the internet to get that information. The purpose of the software is to extract that information, in many cases decode certain information within those files, and present them in a fashion that an investigator can investigate the actual information and draw opinions, inferences, or conclusions about what has taken place.
Does the CacheBack program that you've developed compensate for time changes?
Yes, it does. A lot of the components or properties within the cache and history are stored in a variety of different time formats, which are generally stored in Universal Coordinated Time, or GMT, and that conversion process has to then account for time zones, particularly where the
I put it on the screen. The reason I did that instead of a YouTube poll is because when you're running StreamYard, if you do a YouTube poll, as I've found, you can't actually see the poll results. It doesn't come up in the chat when on StreamYard. It comes up for you guys, but not for me. So when I've done YouTube polls, I've not been able to see the results. So for anyone who's just now joining us, we are hearing from John Dennis Bradley. He's the expert that they brought in from Canada to do the computer. But what I'm asking you guys, so that's why I'm going to do it this way. So if you see the bottom there, put a 1 in the chat if you think that her cause of death, Caylee's cause of death, was chloroform. 2 for drowning, 3 for the duct tape, or 4 for something else. And you feel free to specify what if you think it was something else, what that thing is. So Neeson Z is saying she thought it was some kind of sleeping pill or medicine. Okay, awesome. This is great. So that way we can sort of have the poll go this way.
offense took place. So my software does take that into account, and it's a configurable option.
Do you do teaching?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Give us a little bit of background on your teaching experience.
While I was still a police officer, I spent 2 years instructing NCASE Advanced Internet Forensics for Guidance Software, a California-based company. I did that for approximately 2 years. I instructed law enforcement, private sector, corporate individuals. After that actually was along the lines of time I actually left policing to go to the bank. I have developed a forensic course for our local community college, Durham College, and instructed that for 1 semester. I have also developed my own training.
That's why I was asked. So that's why I was thinking maybe it was Xanax. So these would all have been sort of the rooms, Zanny the nanny, right? All of this makes sense from what we would have heard and what we probably still hear, right? Again, this case is so notorious. What's so interesting is that in the last 3 live streams, because it was 3 parts, I covered the Orange County Sheriff's Office investigative report. And one of the things that was so interesting is that they asked witness after witness. Some have testified in the trial and some haven't, but they asked like dozens of people the same question. Did you ever see her do drugs? Did you ever see her do drugs? And it came out from somebody that one of the roommates that lived there with Tony Lazaro, one of those roommates was prescribed Xanax. And so I'm wondering if that is where all this started. So they asked the roommate, are you prescribed Xanax? He was like, yes. And then they asked him, like, did you ever give her any Xanax or sell her any Xanax or whatever? And he was like, I've never seen her do any drugs apart from. So the answers that they got was either people never saw her do drugs ever, or the people that saw her do drugs, it was smoking pot occasionally. But what's so interesting is there was never any witness or any evidence. In fact, it was the opposite. They were like really fishing for it, which is what was so interesting. They were really fishing for it, really trying to get an answer. And there was nothing except for occasionally smoking pot and like drinking beer, right? Like, and so they really wanted to get to this roommate. And I'm sure they were hoping that roommate would say, yeah, I gave her Xanax, right? But isn't it so interesting? And that's why when I thought about it, when Indeed Some Z said they couldn't remember the medication, I was like, I bet it was Xanax. And Candace, exactly, right? In terms of that's what it would be like. Oh yeah, and I'm sure that we've heard that from people, right? And that's why it's so interesting. Shout out to Super Planner Girl, glad you're here. We are just discussing what is your impression? There's a poll at the bottom there, but what do you think? If you can remember back to the time or what your impression is now, what do you think is the Caylee's cause of death? Because this is going to come up when we get to the forensic pathologist, and there's some really crazy stuff that's going to happen. It's going to be crazy. And that's why I'm asking this question. Because, oh my gosh, I can't type. Because, again, like what this clearly shows again is that the state there's multiple theories. And what does that say about the state's case, right? Like, was it, I think, there's no way, like there's nothing to do with the Xanax. Again, Casey, like I said, it came out in the investigator. She didn't do drugs except for smoking pot occasionally, right? But that's not even the question I'm asking, because what I'm getting at is what did everybody hear, right? Because that's what's so interesting about this is what everybody heard. Because in this case, I think that the rumors are equally as important as the facts, because the rumors are so off base. But the fact that they were that pervasive is what matters, right? That things can be completely off and be that pervasive, right? Right. No, every single person, right? Every single drugged or suffocated, right? So that would be drugged. I'm probably again Xanax, right? And suffocated. You're probably thinking along the lines of the duct tape, like Candace said earlier. And my recollection from back in the day, at some point, I remember thinking that it was drowned. And I made this comment early on too. I was like, wait, did she drown or was it chloroform? Of course, with the chloroform, it's because of these Google searches, which is what we're getting into today. I should note also that when we covered that investigative report, it came out in the investigative report that when they asked, because the searches were done on the Anthony family computer, right? So they don't know who made the searches. So when they went and asked them, they looked at the work history, and Cindy was at work when those searches were made. But guess what? George was out of work for the entire duration of any of these supposedly suspicious searches. Again, there's other things that are going to come out about that. But for any credence you give the searches, George was available the entire time. So there's that too. Right. The pool. Right. The pool. And that's because of Laddergate. That's because of Laddergate, as I call it, because the ladder was up on the pool and the gate was open. And that came from Cindy. And we've talked a lot about that. Right. I mean, that's why it's going to be so interesting when we get to the medical examiners. And I'm wondering if it's going to be that because of so much time has passed that they're going to say that they can't say for sure that she drowned. Like they can't rule it out. I'm wondering if that's what's going to come out.
that they can't say for sure that she drowned because of the time, I think it was 5 or 6 months of the time that had elapsed. But this is it is terribly sad. I think what's up. The other thing that adds to this terrible sadness is this prosecution and the lack of a thorough investigation that was done. And a lot of that really comes out in that investigative report that I covered in 3 parts. You see the full extent of their investigation in that report. And the vast majority of it is trying to find witnesses who will say bad things about Casey. And what's interesting is just how much they fail at that effort. So.
Curriculum for my software. It's called Advancing Internet Forensics. I've instructed several courses.
And the other two things, the only thing that they do find, right? The only thing is the lying, but they try to find, did she want to get rid of her daughter? They don't find anything with that. They don't find anything with drugs, right? But the one thing that's consistent is that she lied. But again, I think if you watch those video jail calls, which I know many of you did, it sheds a completely different picture in terms of the origin of the quote unquote lying. To me, I know it's easy to call it lying. I don't consider it lying anymore. I think it's the result of extreme gaslighting. And that's also just very evident in those video jail calls.
2 years for that to several law enforcement government agencies. And I also am sometimes a guest speaker at events such as techno-security conferences and techno-forensics.
In connection then with your teaching engagements, did you teach the advanced computer forensics regarding your CacheBack program to members of the Orange County Sheriff's Office sometime in the last 2 years?
Yes, I did. December 8th, I believe, to the 10th of 2009, I was in Orlando at the University of Central Florida. They have a special lab there for the U.S. Secret Service, and I was instructing a course at that time.
Okay. Did you meet an individual by the name of Kevin Stenger?
Yes, I did.
Did Sergeant Stenger ask you to take a look at a data file?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Tell us about the item that he asked you to look at.
This is crazy to me. So basically, he's teaching this course in Florida. This dude's Canadian. Sergeant Stenger is at this course, and that's who we heard from on the last episode. And he goes up to him and says, can you take a look at this data file? And this data file is going to be these searches on the Anthony computer.
Sergeant Stenger indicated to me that he had a file on a thumb drive that was part of an investigation. The information in that file was recovered contiguously from a hard drive in relation to a matter. And he explained to me that the
Your Honor, this is an expert witness. He's utilizing information provided as to the history of the file that was given to him in order to evaluate and complete his analysis. He's allowed to rely on hearsay information initially to start that procedure.
Objection overruled.
I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question now.
I think I generally asked you what information was given to you and what you were asked to do with it.
He explained to me that what was of interest within this block of data, he explained 2 things. Number 1, the block of data was apparently from a Firefox 2. This is a type of browser, and the 2 being the version number. There are certain characteristics about that made him come to that conclusion, and he explained that to me. Within the body of the information he recovered, there was some plain text information. And one of the keywords that were of interest to him that he explained to me was of interest was the word chloroform.
Now, you said something about contiguous information. Why was that important to you?
The importance of information being contiguous relates more importantly to the location on the hard drive where it was recovered. In this case, an area of the hard drive commonly referred to in the forensic industry as unallocated clusters simply means it's a portion of the hard drive that is not being used and is not allocated for use for any file. Information that is deleted ends up in this area of the hard drive and is subject to being overwritten, either sooner than later, sometimes not for a long time. And what was interesting about this information was that the header, the beginning signature of that data block, and the contents within the footer in between was apparently all intact. Why that is important is when you find information in unallocated space, the number of contiguous allocation units, the greater the number, the less likelihood you'll get an intact file. In this case here, a number of clusters had to have been allocated for this file, this data block, and I was impressed to learn that it was all intact.
How was the information actually provided to you? I believe you referenced a thumb drive.
That is correct.
Okay. Did you examine the contents of the thumb drive?
I copied the contents onto my forensic workstation that I had with me at the time, and I believe I returned the thumb drive to him, and I worked from the workstation or the laptop from that point forward.
Okay. Were you able to verify the information that was initially provided to you as to what they were looking at when you reviewed the file?
Yes, I did. I initially conducted a cursory review to get a visual appreciation as to how the information was organized. And from a visual perspective, taking my time to scroll through the entire file, it appeared to be correct. And I was able to locate a keyword, chloroform, within the body of that information.
Okay. Now you had, in the earlier part of your testimony, referenced the header and the footer that was part of this contiguous bit of information.
Here's the other thing I will say. Here's the other thing I'll say. That if the state doesn't think chloroform was the cause of death, then why on earth have they spent so much time and brought in so many witnesses? So, like, for example, we had Dr. Arpad Voss, right? And we had other forensic people with the trunk and the spare tire cover, right? And that they detected remnants of chloroform or whatever. And of course, there were other explanations that could be for that because of the chemical because chloroform, as they went through, chloroform is also found in like common cleaning, like soda. It can have it like, now not enough to hurt anybody, obviously, but just in terms of what's detectable, right? Or like cleaning products, laundry detergent. They went through this whole list. It was all of the things that were found in that trash bag that had been in the car for so long, right? So anyway, but nevertheless, whether it's chloroform from chloroform or chloroform detected from something else, the fact that the state brought in all these witnesses to say that they detected chloroform, and then they bring in this guy and they're going to talk about the chloroform searches. That to me, I think is why it seems like, well, surely the state thinks chloroform is the cause of death, right? Because otherwise, why would this be happening? And from a legal perspective, why would it be relevant, right? Because if it's not relevant, that's the first test of admissibility. It has to be relevant. So they had to show prior to the trial, right, how this was relevant. And the only reason that would make sense is because they're hammering the chloroform hard, basically, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens as we go along, because I think there's some surprises in store.
Replicated on the data that you copied?
That information was present, yes.
What was the size of the data file that was retrieved from the unallocated space?
I recall the file being approximately 3.2 megabytes or 3.2 million bytes. Byte would be equivalent to a character.
Okay. Were you able to draw any conclusions about the deleted file from its size?
The conclusion or my belief at that time was that based on the size of the file and the fact that it was recovered from unallocated space, a level of inactivity in some fashion must have taken place for that information to not have been overwritten. Now, I'll qualify that by saying that other factors come into play about when data in unallocated space is actually overwritten. It varies from the use of the computer by the users or user the size of the hard drive, and the number of applications that are being used, and how much disk space is actually currently allocated to the operating system. But based on that information, I was impressed to find that it was actually recoverable.
Is there any way, given the information that was provided to you, to tell when that Internet history record was deleted?
I can't say when it was deleted.
Okay. Do you know if Mozilla Firefox has any automatic deletion of its Internet history once it reaches a certain size or a certain date?
The browser will not delete the entire history when it reaches a threshold. That version of the Mozilla Firefox browser did not come with any automated or pre-default privacy mode either.
From your answer, can we conclude that the history would have had to have been deleted manually?
Yes.
Once you did your preliminary review of the information provided to you, what was your next step?
My next step was to, within the development environment of the software I happen to have on my workstation, run it through an enormous number of tests to try and figure out what the issues were that it couldn't be originally parsed or decoded. So over the course of the next 3 days, I actually spent a lot of time looking at it, a very small piece of information at a time, to see what were the characters that I needed to deal with to try and decode it. And essentially, I spent a lot of time trying to understand how this was different from anything else and work around that from a development perspective to decode it.
All right. After spending that period of time with the information, were you able to parse or decode it?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Through a number of repeated tests to make sure that it was parsed, I was able to corroborate the work that I had done using a third-party reliable software to account for all of the markers that would tell me how many records I should be finding.
Does the CacheBack program generate a report?
Yes, it does.
Would you recognize 165 in evidence as a portion of the CacheBack report filtered for the date of March 17th of 2008?
Yes, I recognize this as a CacheBack report with information dated on that date. Appears to be a CacheBack report.
Same for 166 in evidence. Do you recognize that as the same filtered for the date of March 21st of 2008?
Yes, with the exception of one entry at the start for the 20th.
All right. Mr. Bradley, can you tell us what is displayed at the top of the report and what each of those items mean?
I have a portion that seems to superimpose over top of a report. Is that the portion you're referring to?
Yes, the superimposed portion that we zoomed into.
This is a single row entry in the report with some headers or column header information. The first column is an index. It's simply a value that numbers all of the results. The URL ID is a primary key database value to correspond to the actual file that now houses the decoded results. The type column is a visual representation of the type of browser from which the data was extracted. The visits column represents the number of times that particular URL.
So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I've never done this yet in this entire trial, but he just, you guys will be surprised because how arduous the prosecution makes this direct examination. At least that's my impression, and how completely different it is on cross. But I'm going to just jump ahead to where he gets into more substantive information about his findings here.
2.
I only went ahead like 2 minutes, but let's see.
What is that indicative of?
That's the number of times that particular web address or URL
So he's going through how, but she's going to ask him all of this for each specific thing. So let's just.
typed in or submitted along with your request.
Oh my God.
Keyword and value pairs that should follow.
Ugh.
The following item
Okay.
is RES and the value is number. And as you follow along, there's an ampersand Q followed by the word chloroform, and then lastly, ampersand spell 1.
So what information does this provide?
Some of this information, in fact, a lot of it, is provided by the server when the request is fulfilled. The important part about a Google search is the actual keyword value pair that starts with Q. In this case here, Q represents query, and the value would be chloroform, as you see it there. The ampersand spell 1 suggests to me that this was a value presented in the results that said, did you mean, or do you want to look for this term instead of what you actually wanted to search for? That item was clicked on, and that produced this result here.
Does the next entry, which is 443, provide any different information to you?
Yes, it does.
How so?
I'm sorry?
How so?
The first thing that I remark is the exact value of the timestamps. They're identical. The Q condition in this case is chloroform spelled CHLORAFORM as opposed to O.
So what we're hearing here is that whoever was typing this in typed it in and couldn't spell it correctly. And they spelled it with a K first, and then now it's like CHLORA, right? Now remember, put that in the context of the fact that these searches are interspersed with visits to MySpace, and that Ricardo Morales sent Casey that picture on MySpace with the chloroform. And so it would make sense that if she's like, what is that? She doesn't know what it is. She would, if it's her, right? Because we know George was also available at the time, that she could be spelling it wrong, right?
And it does not end in the ampersand spell 1. This suggests to me that that was the first item entered as the keyword, spelled with the A in chloroform, which then produced the results above it.
I'm sorry, produce the results?
Above it.
Okay. All right. When you have entries that are showing as the exact same time, are they shown in some chronological fashion?
The report in CacheBack will sort first by timestamp and then second on the actual URL. It doesn't necessarily represent the chronology in which the events truly took place. The nature of web browsers and the internet is asynchronous. Therefore, one has to take a second look when the timestamps are the same and try and extrapolate some sense as to what took place.
Okay. If the timestamp is different, meaning that there's some distinction as we see with entry 444, which ends in 48 rather than 41, can we conclude that those are in the correct chronological order?
Yes.
Since the timestamp is different?
Yes.
Okay. Going then to 444, looking at that entry, can you draw any conclusions as to what that is?
This is a URL that has been added in behind the scenes for tracking the user's behavior or activity. In this case here, add.doubleclick.net is notorious for tracking user activities, more for statistical and advertising purposes.
All right. Would that result in a pop-up, or is that just one of those cookies?
This would be a background information within the history itself.
Okay. Are those inserted at various points in time in the internet history?
They are inserted as they occur or as they are requested. Due to the fact that tracking software tends to be taxing or there is a time issue related to the tracking software sometimes calling home and reporting the information, then coming back. So it's not unusual to see some seconds gone by between different adwares or ad tracking software.
In this record from the 17th, do you see several examples of this sort of background information infiltrating, for lack of a better word, the internet search history?
Yes, I do. Item number 445.
Okay, so again, this is just, and the way she asks her questions, right? She just could do this in such a better way that makes way more sense. And, you know, and of course we can't even see those things on the screen are completely like, look at that. Great. Let's see what they're, so you can see that, you can tell the Firefox logo. Though.
Is that something happening in the background?
No, this appears to be a typed or a bookmarked URL.
Okay. And that is for?
Photobucket.com.
As we continue down this report, do you see activity on the Photobucket website?
Yes, I do.
Where at?
Items, I believe 457, 458, 459, 460, 461.
Oh my God. Okay. Portal.
There is a annotation device on the screen. If you touch it, it will show up as a colored line.
This result caused that result. Or that result caused that
this
result.
This goes on for a really long time. This result caused that result, and then he keeps saying this result caused that one caused that one.
This result caused that result. This result caused this result.
Great. What does this show?
I believe this result caused that result.
Is this active user activity clicking through items that are presenting themselves on the screen?
Yes.
All right. As we continue in chronological fashion, can you tell us what's happening on this computer?
The line item 472 may be another tie-in to the prior page.
Yes, sir.
Item 473.
Can we go ahead a little further?
Yes. At line item 477, 2:58 p.m. and 58 seconds, a URL from the search results was selected, again, visiting the wikipedia.org website ending in RBSD. I do not know what that would be.
Okay.
Line item 478 at 2:59 p.m. and 8 seconds. Again, it's wikipedia.org, ending in hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, this part, this is going to come up on cross. This is interesting.
And I believe that would also be a search results link that was selected.
Thank you. Let me clear that. All right, if you can just continue on in like fashion and tell us what's happening on this computer.
At line item 479, at 3 p.m. and 4 seconds, a search results was selected, which appears to have generated the following item, 480, at 3 p.m. and 14 seconds, which is again at the Wikipedia website, ending in head injuries.
Head injuries?
Actually, I got ahead of myself. I believe this item here caused that item. 481 appears to have caused 480 to be entered. And shall I continue down the list?
Yes, please.
482 at 3 p.m. and 26 seconds appears to be a wikipedia.org URL ending in head_injury. The next item, 483 at 3:02 p.m. and 8 seconds. Again, at the wikipedia.org website ending in middle_meningial artery. Line item 484 at 3:03 p.m. and 54
She looks so confused. Like, I don't know what any of this is.
seconds. Again, wikipedia.org.
Remember, guys, George was at home when these searches were made.
URL ending in ruptured spleen, and
I don't think she knows what a spleen is. I don't even know. I mean, I know a spleen is an organ. Other than that, I don't even know.
485 at 3:04 p.m. and 28 seconds. Again, wikipedia.org website URL ending in chest trauma. And then line item 486 at 3:04 p.m. and 56 seconds appears to be a search results listing wikipedia.org with a search term of internal bleeding.
So far we've heard Wikipedia is for hand-to-hand combat, meningial artery, what was it? Chest trauma, ruptured spleen, internal bleeding. This is all going to come up on cross.
Which I believe then caused the following line item, 487, at the same timestamp.
All right, once that series is gone through by the user, we have these page add to displayed. What is that?
These appear to be Google Ads or AdWords advertisements of some sort that have found their way into there automatically.
Are these continuous ad pop-ups, or do we have actual activity on the computer?
I would not refer to them as pop-ups.
I'm sorry.
I would refer them as stuff that has just found their way into the history automatically.
Aside from those entries, then, is there other activity that is going on the screen?
Yes. Item 490 at 3:05 p.m. and
So good question here from Super Planner Girl. The mom is in the medical field, right? Yeah, that's a great point. She's a nurse. That's a great point. Now, what we saw in the Orange County Sheriff's Office investigative report, they specified that when the chloroform searches were made, Cindy was at work, but it did not specify as to these other searches whether or not they checked to see the work schedule. But what we do know is that while Cindy could be working or at home, George was out of work. So George was like always home, right? But that's a good point about she's a nurse Cindy. Yeah, absolutely. Because these are like terms that people wouldn't normally be, you wouldn't even know it. Just that's
17 seconds. Link to articleworld.org.
Good point.
Referencing a item called internal bleeding. Line item 492 at 3:05 p.m. and 47 seconds. Again, the wikipedia.org website referencing a URL item ending in hypovolernia.
What are these from 495
hypovolernia? What the fuck is that? I mean, really?
through 501?
I believe these are all auto-created adware or ad items, advertisements, I should say. And also, I see an item there, line 498, referencing myspace.com. I don't know exactly what it refers to, but it seems to appear to have been created automatically in reference to perhaps a cookie stored on the user system. Again, these appear to be auto-generated either ad or tracking URLs to the history.
What activity is showing on the computer with this entry in the sequence?
Excuse me. This appears to be a facebook.com URL ending in.
What's interesting is they're not giving the times. Notice that, guys. Like it's blurry. We can't read it. It doesn't look like there's times on there, but even if there were, we can't read it. But regardless, what she's not doing, she's saying the next entry in the sequence. Now, what this means is, as we heard earlier, he was given keywords to search for. So all he's pulling up is the results for things that looked suspicious or whatever, right? What it's not doing, like this would be so different, I feel like, in trials these days, right? It's not a complete list in chronological order. There's no timestamps on any of this, right? So it's not like you notice in her question, it's not like, so what was searched for at 12:01 p.m. or whatever, right? That's not happening. She's just saying it's the next one in the sequence. Now it's a bit misleading because someone could understand that to mean they were searched back to back, but that's not the case. It's in the sequence of the things that came up based on his keywords criteria that he put in for like a huge range of months. So the next thing in the sequence could be from next week. In other words, is what I'm getting at there.
reqs.php. It appears to be an item that was accessed by a hyperlink that was perhaps saved as a bookmark.
Okay. Active user activity to
I believe this is user activity versus something auto-generated.
the number 8
The number of times visited
since
historically up until 1650-44. Actually, I will clarify that insofar as the contents of the file that I actually analyzed there from that URL, that number of times it was visited is 8. It's basically a counter for that particular entry. This appears to be some type of auto-generated item. And I can't explain what it actually refers to, except there's the word view, and I also see the beginning letters MSN right here, and the word view.
okay.
Again, this because the syntax or the difficult construct of this item, I would believe that this is auto-generated.
Would this be auto-generated as well?
These two, yes. These two, yes. This one here
515.
may have been visited by result of selecting a hyperlink.
So again, you can tell there's no timestamps on any of this. It's just the numbers upon the way it's organized in his software or whatever.
Or auto-generated as well. I can't say for sure.
Okay.
I just see the words here, read message, and a token value. So I don't know if that is automatically submitted based on a cookie value, but I can't say for sure.
Can you tell if this is, again, the auto-generated signature in the URL?
Appears to be an option of selecting to view an album with a friend ID indicated here. View album, which would support this.
Sorry.
Created by the system.
These 4 items here all occurred at the same time. And I would believe that this item here is where it started, and the rest being an asynchronous type response, they were recorded. And this appears to be adware or some type of auto-inserted part of the history. And this one here, it says, first item here says cache traffic, content, classmates online. Again, I believe that's some type of auto-inserted item.
How about once you get down to the view more pics MySpace reference?
Yes, line item 531 has a visit count of 3, and the syntax supports, again, a possible user interaction. Because the construct of the URL is something that's probably auto-generated as an option on the web page, again, based possibly on a cookie.
He loves cookies
bookmark.
and he loves bookmarks. Oh, there
Is
it
this
is.
activity on
He loves cookies and he loves bookmarks.
Facebook.com?
Yes, it appears to be so.
She's passing bottles of water over to their trees. They're probably trying out falsely.
User-generated activity? Somebody
Great.
sitting at the...
Wonderful. Let's go
This is
forward.
one of the items that was returned from the Google Chrome.
Go far until cross. I might even skip ahead to cross because literally we don't really learn a whole lot. The thing that was noteworthy was we heard, which was those really weird Wikipedia searches or whatever visits. Let me just see. There, she's still doing that pose. Okay, let me go right. I'll go to the end of direct here if I can. Let's see if he's got a final opinion. I doubt it.
At 15:26 and 24 seconds.
Yes?
Is that a Google search?
Yes, it is.
For?
The words neck breaking with a space in between.
How do you know that?
This is going to
You
come
can tell by
across.
the syntax of the statement. The HL keyword has a value of EN for English, the ampersand Q for query, the definition, and the final item button equals G search, and there's no suffix to suggest a spelling suggestion. This appears to be a genuine search.
Okay. Entry 47 regarding Wikipedia. Is that related to that search above it in any way?
I can't say that it is.
Okay, so how does entry 47 end up in the history record?
This could be a saved
Cookie or bookmark? Okay.
bookmark,
Yes. Or
or
cookie.
it was manually typed in.
Activity by the user.
Yes.
Is 49 where it references MySpace activity by the user?
I believe so because of the added information in the URL that suggests that a token was submitted or recognized by the system.
What is represented by this entry?
The URL here is from the Facebook question mark.
Just.
And as we move past this entry on 3/21/08 at 1500 hours, 29 minutes and 10 seconds, if I may approach the witness with the remainder of the report.
Okay. Coaching.
Yes, for all of these that I put here, page 13, yes. Again, there's at least 2 items in here that appear to be auto-generated ad tracking.
What time does the Facebook activity end? Can you tell from that history?
21st of March, 2008 at 3:37 p.m. and 14 seconds.
So I think the reason that they're asking about the Facebook history, I think that's how they're trying to prove that it could have been Casey on the computer based on the fact that if she was like, because I think the idea is that back then, no, it wasn't like everyone had Facebook. Like, in other words, like George and Cindy didn't have Facebooks, right? That's what I think. Now, we don't know that. I think that's just what the jury would maybe at that time even assume it, maybe. We heard Cindy talk about how she didn't know much about MySpace, but they didn't ask about Facebook. But again, it's different now, right? We're like, it's ubiquitous. But I think that's why they're asking that question. Because again, the Facebook thing is just showing someone visited Facebook. It's not showing, they don't have like a user login or whatever, but I think that they're thinking that's enough to show it must have been Casey using the computer.
Were you asked to perform any other examination for the Orange County Sheriff in connection with this case?
No, not that I recall.
Why would you ask that question?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no other questions of the witness.
All right, we're done with that. Her big finish was, did you do any other investigation on this case? And his answer was no. Then why did you ask the question? Anyway, all right, this cross is epic. So get excited, people.
Cross-examination.
Excuse me.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I'm trying to put a lot of what you have into context, and I want to go over it with you.
Yay.
Forgive me if I'm a bit repetitive as to what Mr. Drane-Burdick covered with you. Let's start off with actually, you were originally approached by Mr. Stenger, correct? Sergeant Stenger?
Yes, that's correct.
This gets crazy.
And the reason he approached you is because
Y'all,
he was using your software.
just keep in the back of your minds that the state did not get out ahead of things and see what happens on this cross.
And there was a bug in it.
Well, I would say there was an issue in the way it managed Firefox 2 history.
Right. He couldn't get it to work correctly.
The software functioned correctly in the state in which it was at the time dealing with Firefox 2 history. In this particular case, it was an extraordinary circumstance, an extraordinary version of the history.
But my question to you, sir, is he approached you because he couldn't get your software to work, correct?
He stated he could get it to work so far, and then it would not complete the decoding. That is correct.
And then what happened was...
So in other words, Sergeant Stinger didn't approach him because he's like, you're an expert and I need your help, which is the way that he tried to make it sound indirect. What he's saying is Sergeant Stinger approached him because he was like, hey, your shit's not working properly. Ouch.
You were here on a conference and you stayed up pretty much all night trying to fix it?
Yes.
Okay. And he gave you certain information to try and put all these searches into context, correct?
Can you clarify that question?
You don't just look at this blindly. You kind of have you get a little information about the case, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you worked all night and you put something together for him.
Took me a few nights. Yeah.
A few nights?
Great.
Okay. So you went back to Canada.
I was instructing a course here for 3 days, and on breaks, lunches, and when I finished class from 5 p.m. till 2 a.m. until 3 a.m. on the Friday before I flew out that morning, I was working on it.
Got it. So before you left, you were able to complete these searches for him.
Yes.
Okay. And then subsequent to that, you were hired for this case.
Can I clarify that? I didn't complete the searches. I completed the decoding.
My mistake in the question. You completed your assignment.
Yes.
And then you were subsequently hired for this case.
I wouldn't say I was, well, can you clarify hiring?
Oh, y'all get ready.
Okay.
Y'all get ready.
You were asked to become a witness, an expert
This
witness.
is where y'all, this just starts going. This is so incredible. This cross. The way he says, can you clarify hired? And the way Mr. Bio says, okay. Oh my God.
Case.
Can I clarify that? I didn't complete the searches. I completed the decoding.
My mistake in the question. You completed your assignment.
Yes.
And then you were subsequently hired for this case.
I wouldn't say I was, well, can you clarify hiring?
Okay. You were asked to become a witness, an expert witness in the case?
Yes, and while it was explained to me that I didn't have to come from Canada, I agreed to, yeah, of course. So I didn't consider it a contract, or I was asked to come down as a witness, and I happily said yes, of course.
Okay. And you did that for free?
I'm here today without concern for remuneration, but from my understanding in some discussions that could be addressed afterwards, but it's not my concern.
Okay. You haven't discussed how much you're going to get paid yet?
Not worried about that.
Okay.
But we have.
I'm sorry?
We have as far as what the state is willing to pay, but that's not a concern to me.
Okay. Is it the advertising that's a concern to you?
Here we go.
I don't understand what, there is no concern for me to be here.
Okay. You're involved in the biggest, in a high profile case. You're aware of that, right?
Of course.
Okay. And this is your software that you're testifying about?
Yes.
Okay.
So insane.
And it's something you developed?
Yes.
Okay. And if I were to go to your website, would there be any advertisements about you testifying in this case?
Uh-oh.
There is a link on the homepage that I put up a few weeks ago in regards to a specific and single article that referenced my name and the software, and I only put it up recently. Kind of a subtle way for people to see how CacheBack might have been used. Now, insofar as to support or to explain, excuse me, your reference to the word concern, Firefox 2 is long ago deprecated, and at the time it was in transition to version 3. Most people were already adopting version 3, so it was a vendor's choice as to whether to go back and recode against a soon-to-be obsolete version, and that's kind of where we are today.
So if I go to your website, right under the name CacheBack 3,
Oh boy.
is there a section there that says #1 choice for internet forensic investigations?
Yes.
And right below that is an article that you posted about your participation in this case?
Yes.
And do you consider that advertisement?
Of course it's an advertisement, but it's subtle. I mean, it's been 2 years now, and I haven't sent a single promotional anything to promote any involvement in this case. The only reason why I put that particular item up is because Sergeant Stanger sent me an email to indicate, hey, you might be coming down here after all. Your picture's here, it's talking about you. This is a small something to support the validity of the software for those who are looking at it.
It certainly doesn't hurt the promotion of your product, though.
No, it doesn't hurt.
Now,
but
I'm sorry?
I'm not overwhelmed with phone calls right now either, and it's been up there for a few weeks. So the purpose wasn't to make money off it. The purpose was simply to support those who were deciding, is this a valid tool or recognized in the industry, And certainly in this case it was, so it was a small item to put up there. So I was,
And that you're the number one choice for forensic investigation.
Here it goes.
and that terminology's been up there prior to that.
Now, sir, in pulling these up, the first search on March 17th of 2008 for chloroform, how long is
you're ready.
the user on that website before another website comes up?
I'm at a disadvantage. Can I have the information posted up on the screen?
You are.
May I
I agree. You are at a disadvantage.
approach the witness, Your Honor?
Oh, this cross is so good.
165.
And what was the question again, please? In
How
reference to-
long was a person who was visiting that site looking at the website for chloroform before another page came up?
This is a 57-page document. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to start looking.
Sure, I'll tell you. I'll direct you right there. The 1:43 p.m. and 41 seconds.
On which date? The 20,
March 17th, excuse me.
and the time was 4 something?
1:43,
For the,
41.
okay, I'm at 17th of March, 2008 at 2:43 p.m.
Yes, I guess 2:43. Yes, there's an hour off.
Okay.
How long before someone goes to the next, before another page is gone to?
Oh, you're looking at the next item, which is 2:43, 41 seconds.
Yes,
Appears to be 7 seconds.
7 seconds. Okay. So after looking at chloroform for the first time, 7 seconds goes by and then another page comes up.
Well, the first item that you referred to was the google.com homepage. And the second item was the search results at 41 seconds. Does that answer your question?
I think you did. It's 7 seconds, right? We're talking about?
Yes?
Okay. All right. Now, the next time
Oh my God.
chloroform is brought up at 1:53:25, how long is a person looking at chloroform before another page comes up?
You said 1:53, you mean 2:53?
I'm sorry, 2:53. I'm off it out.
Okay, 2:53:25.
Correct.
I have a reference to Wikipedia.
Right?
Okay, so I'm there. What was your question, sir?
The next time another page comes up.
1 second later.
Okay. So you got 7 seconds, then 1 second. Correct?
According to the history, yes.
Okay. Now,
Now, I should explain something before we go. I know where you're going with this question about the seconds and the time elapsed.
Oh my God.
but
I don't want you
answer-
to, I want you to just answer my questions if you
Certainly,
can.
okay.
If you feel you need to explain, we can.
I object when the witness is trying to respond to the context of Mr. Bai's question.
Sustained, did you finish answering the question, sir?
Thank you, Your Honor. The purpose of my role is to decode the history. By reviewing the timestamps that were decoded, we have a chronology. Now, certainly, one of the checks and balances from a forensic perspective is to take the results and then, if they're not, or if they raise questions, such as a 1 second disparity, how is it humanly possible to get a result and then go on to something else? And how is that done? Based on the clues left behind in the beginning part of the chronology, one might try to replicate that using an experiment or a series of experiments. Those were not requested of me, nor did I do them.
I totally understand.
So I can't speak to why there might be a 1 second discrepancy between two visits.
Interesting that
No
they
one's
announced-
asking you why.
Okay.
No one's asking you why. Great.
Mr. Bradley, we totally understand. I'm just trying to get the facts of what you got in the history.
Fair enough.
Okay. Now, sir, the subsequent to that 1 second, there are some other Wikipedia searches for
Here we go. This is great.
peroxide and things like that, correct?
Yes?
Okay. And then someone types in at 2:58:38, Exactly what?
Excuse me. 25838?
Yes.
I can't say if someone necessarily typed this in, but it's a reference to Wikipedia, and there's a search, a consistent search definition for self-defense.
Okay. So maybe someone typed it in, or somehow the screen ended up with self-defense on Wikipedia.
Well, I have gone so far as to prepare for today, and I've actually visited at least Wikipedia's website. And my own common knowledge of the Wikipedia is it tends to underscore keywords within documents. So as you're going through, it's just as easy to click on an item, you stay within the Wikipedia website, and lo and behold, you have a new item registered.
And for those jury members who are not familiar with Wikipedia, a page will come up and it'll describe an article, and then it might have a link to another topic
Within that
within that
website.
article.
Yeah, Wikipedia is a new name for encyclopedia.
Okay. So basically, at some point, self-defense became a topic that was looked at on this computer.
Yes.
Okay. And after that, at 25858, it's reality-based self-defense, correct?
I see an acronym, if that's what it stands for.
Okay. Do you have any cause to doubt that based on what you're reading?
I see RBSD at the end of the URL, so I don't know what that represents.
Okay. What about the next at 25908? That would have been 10 seconds later?
Yes, that one ends in hand-to-hand combat.
Did the investigators inform you that hand-to-hand combat has anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
Okay. And after that, you have at 3 p.m. and 14 seconds, head injuries.
Yes, that's correct.
The investigators inform you that head injuries had anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
And then 1 minute later, a minute and a half later, you have middle meningial, I'm going to butcher this word, meningial artery.
Is that, excuse me, line item 483?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know what that is, sir?
No idea.
Okay, that makes two of us. Did the investigators tell you that that has anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll look at the next one, which is, I guess, 1 minute later, 1 minute and 30 seconds later, 40 seconds?
Ending in ruptured spleen?
Yes, ruptured spleen.
I was not made aware of that being in any relevance.
Okay. And then subsequent to that, 35 seconds later, what's the next search?
Chest trauma?
Did the investigators tell you that has anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
And those are much longer times that have been spent on the chloroform topics, correct?
Yes, correct.
And then the next search at 3:04:56, internal bleeding.
Yes.
Did the investigators tell you that anyone was internally bleeding 3 months prior to this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Then at 3:05:47, I guess that's like 30 seconds later, somebody types in hypovolemia.
I can't say that someone typed in.
I apologize.
But obviously somehow that was referenced.
So somebody's looking at hypovolemia.
Yes.
Did the investigators tell you anybody had hypovolemia in this case?
No, sir.
And then after that, you got some Facebook and some other searches that have no relevance, correct?
That appears so, yes.
Okay. All right, now let's go to March 21st. If we, I've got that one.
Okay.
May I approach?
Thank you.
Mr. Brantley, if I could direct your attention to the first chloroform search there. Now, I catch that at 3:16:30, is that correct?
Well, you made reference to first chloroform search, and if in your context of search you mean referencing anything to do with chloroform, there's 2 records prior to that, so.
Okay. What time do you have? Oh, am I going backwards here? What time do you have the first for the 21st?
Line item 3 at 3:16 p.m. and 13 seconds.
And 13 seconds? Or
Yes.
30 seconds?
1-3.
Okay. Is that a MySpace before that? Just before that? Do you see a MySpace before
There
that one?
it is.
No.
And that's the first search at 3:16:30, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't think we answered the first one.
The first chloroform.
There's a chloroform search at 3:16 and 13 seconds at scispot.com.
Okay.
And then 2 entries afterwards is a Google.com search for chloroform.
Okay, let's go line by line if we can.
Certainly.
How many seconds is the first search?
Excuse me. The line item 3 at 3:16 p.m. and 13 seconds for scispot.com. And then the difference between that and the next search at 30 seconds is approximately, make me do my math, 17 seconds.
17 seconds? Okay, and then going to the next page,
And what am I looking for?
how many seconds before the next page?
See, I don't quite understand when you say next page. I have
The next search or
well,
entry that you
the
have.
next item with reference to the word chloroform or a portion thereof is line item 7 at 3:18 p.m. and 55 seconds for scispot.com chemistry chloro2.htm.
And how many pages is that? I mean, how many seconds is that?
From the prior one,
Yeah.
well, you have 1 minute at 17:30, 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 25 seconds.
Okay. And then what's the next search after that?
Well, the next, are we referencing the word chloroform or are we?
Anything after that.
Okay, the next item is entered at line item 9 at 3:19 p.m. and 3:19:16 seconds at druglibrary.org, and it's a big long URL that ends in chloroformhabit.htm.
Right. And what does that come to? How many seconds is it before it goes to that page?
21 seconds.
21 seconds. Now, I want to make sure I caught something. When you gave us the 2 minutes and 25 seconds, were there any other pages that came up in between those?
I'm trying to remember which one I started with to do that math.
Okay.
I believe it was line item 5 and line item 7. There was one item in between at the same timestamp as line item 5. So there's nothing else in between.
Okay. All right. So that's obviously the longest time anyone spent looking at chloroform so far.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. And when you say the chloroform habit, can you read that the one that we're at now that took 21 seconds?
Excuse me, yes.
Can you read the whole portion of what that says?
The URL starts with http://www.druglibrary.org/Schaeffer, SCHAFFER /history
Yes.
/E1880/chloroformhabit.htm.
Okay. Did you look at that page at any time?
Matter of fact, last night I did.
Okay. And that's talking about somebody having a chloroform habit in the 1800s?
I remember the 1800, but I didn't read the article.
Okay. It's a blog, right?
It didn't appear to be anything more than just information. So I don't know if it was a blog, but there was information that seemed to be a person put it there.
Right. Somebody's writing about somebody in the 1800s having a chloroform habit.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Excellent.
And then how long before the next, what's the next page actually?
The next page, search.
Would that be the self-defense search next?
The only item I see on here is weapons out of household products.
Okay. And what time do you have that at?
3:21 p.m. and 56 seconds.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes, super
that
clear.
has-
He's getting his ass handed to him. Yes. And the other thing, so I wanted to point out, it was twofold. The part about,
when they were going through this Wikipedia searches, and it was like, does a ruptured spleen have anything to do with this case? And they went through the list. That was twofold, because the reason he was asking it that way, does that have anything to do with this case, is because we know that he was asked by investigators to look for certain things, and they gave him like keywords to look for, which would mean that, again, that's them reaching, right? Because it's like, it doesn't have anything to do with this case, but yet they wanted him to bring that in, even though it's not relevant. But then the second thing it points out is like, literally all of those things have nothing to do with anything that happened to Caylee. So like, she didn't have a head injury, she didn't have a ruptured spleen, she didn't have all that other stuff, right? So it's twofold, because it shows that it's completely unrelated to like anything that happened to Caylee, right? But also it shows the bias on behalf of the state, asking him to do those searches and bring those in anyway, even though they're irrelevant and have nothing to do with anything that happened to Caylee. I also love this lawyer. He's definitely on my top list of favorite defense attorneys, for sure. For sure.
To do with making weapons out of items at your house?
Well, it's suggestive of what it might contain. I couldn't tell you what it actually pointed to.
Did you look at that?
Nope.
Did the investigators let you know that somebody was making weapons in their house and that was relevant to them?
No, they did not.
Again, great.
And then
Great.
after that comes the searches. What's the next search that you have?
Now, you said search, just a search?
Yes. What's the next page that comes up?
I believe item 45 at 3:26 p.m. and 24 seconds, a Google search with the terms neck breaking.
Now, prior to that,
Oh boy.
do you have anything on Google books, self-defense for women?
I'll go back 3 pages and read each item. At this point, back to page 3 of the report. I don't see any references to a book, unless you can assist me.
That's self-defense for women?
Is that a question?
Yes, I'm asking.
I cannot find anything here with self-defense for women.
Did you look that up to see what that was?
When you say that, look that
that
up.
specific entry.
Again, I'm trying to find the entry to which you're referring to. I'm not able to find anything about a book.
Okay.
Unless you can enlighten me.
Sure. What line are you on? I apologize. Here, right?
I'm actually working my way back to here.
Okay. Can you give me that entry that we were at, sir?
Certainly. Line item 15 at 3:21 p.m. and 56 seconds. Making weapons out of household products.
3:21, 15, and 16 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After that, you have on entry 8401, blogger.com. Is that correct?
8407?
I have 8401 at 3:19 and 4 seconds.
I might believe that we are referencing 2 different reports. I'm not sure.
I'll just move further along, because do you see at
You can finish that sentence, but it's like, I think he was thinking, because there's no point, because you're already done.
3:23 and 8 seconds, themorningnews.org?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that exactly?
32308. The URL states themorningnews.org/archives/opinions/Kevin Fanning's Home Security Basics.
So, do you know what that site's about?
I have
other
no,
than Home Security Basics?
I have no
by
idea.
Kevin Fanning.
No, sir.
Okay, you didn't take a look at that.
That is correct.
And then the next one is?
It starts with blogger.com.
Correct. Does that reference preparing for zombie invasions?
Well, there's reference to those words. Zombies are coming. It's a very long URL. Hope you don't want me to read.
And nobody told you zombies had anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
Oh my God.
Now, all of these searches and all of this activity appears to be surfing rather quickly through the web. Wouldn't you agree?
Yep.
Well, it depends specifically on the type of URL and the syntax of the URL as far as what's taking place. There's what you see in front of you taking place, and there's stuff that happens in the background. In order to attempt to compare these results and speak to this with some sense as to what's happening when and how, I might try to duplicate this step through. Unfortunately, being almost 3 years later, I doubt we'd have much success. But I couldn't assume that the one regarding morning news is, if I could repeat that, the morning news may very well be something that the user accessed, and the similar timestamp could be something that was made available on the website as a clickable option based on a cookie. Given the unique syntax of this, I don't know the defendant, but I couldn't know if that was selected or not. It could be something that was auto-inserted. And I base that answer on the fact that the two timestamps and the one following it are identical, as well as the one that follows that.
So what you're saying is basically there's only limited things you can tell from this information.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, if you go to 3, 25, and 37 seconds, that would take you to funny.com.
Funny.co.uk.
And that would be funny household weapons?
That's how that is completed, that URL, yes.
Okay. And then subsequent to that, it looks like there might be some banner ads.
Yes.
Is that correct? And then you've got the neck breaking at that time.
Neck breaking.
On 3/26/24.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how long is someone on that website before or after that query before they click fightingarts.com?
1 minute and 54 seconds.
And that's a kung fu website, right?
I wouldn't know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can only speculate.
Did you look at fightingarts.com?
No, sir, I wasn't asked to.
And all of these
Which is interesting because
search
there's other ones where he said he did go and visit and see what they were. So I guess he just picked out of curiosity.
searches revolve around funny household weapons, using household weapons, self-defense, and fighting arts. That's all within the same sitting. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, with what we've covered so far, I would agree with that.
And then after that, you have the word shovel, correct?
Yes, Wikipedia.
Okay. Are you familiar with the movie Shovel?
No.
Okay. Are you familiar with any terms other than the literal meaning of shovel, right? Any other terms that is used for?
No.
Okay. Now,
Oh boy.
when talking about all of these, you were hired in 2009?
I was not hired.
You were consulted in 2009.
Yes.
And that was only a few months after this case came about, correct?
Apparently so. Yeah. Well, excuse me.
I can tie it up.
Overrule at this time.
A lot of these websites would have still been active at the time,
Right.
so you could actually go to the links and give a clearer understanding to the jury exactly what's on these websites, right?
I don't have any knowledge of when the computer was seized, but if it was any time within reason of the dates that we're looking at here today, I would agree with that.
Okay. So wouldn't the better evidence be when you're looking at household weapons, funny household weapons, making chloroform and things like that, wouldn't the better evidence be to show a jury the actual page as opposed to a link?
Sustain.
The link only gives you so much information, doesn't it, sir?
Yes, correct.
And in fact, the link doesn't tell you anything that was on that website.
That's correct.
And in fact, these websites could be, as some indicate, jokes,
Yes,
and some could be having to do with self-defense,
yes,
and some could be with kung fu,
yes,
and some could be having to do with chemistry,
yes,
some medical facts like the meningial, the internal bleeding, and the hypovolemia and things like that.
yes, I would agree with that.
So there's a whole array of what these things could mean, or actually, let me rephrase that. There's a whole array of what these things could actually be that the reader is looking at, correct?
Yes,
And you can't even testify
Wow.
as to whether the user's even looking at this stuff.
that's correct.
Because sometimes people are texting while they're on the computer.
Sustain this to the last question.
A computer examiner can never testify that a person is actually reading what's on the page, right?
Not without a security camera watching over them, that is correct.
And a computer examiner could never testify as to whether a person got a phone call during any of these searches and directed their attention.
Same objection as to speculation.
Sustain.
At the end of the day, sir, the information that could be gleaned from these is very little without the actual pages. Wouldn't you agree?
I think that the information that can be gleaned from here can have great context depending on the circumstances and the information by the person reviewing the information.
Let's talk about context for a moment. You have 7 seconds, 1 second, 17 seconds, 2 minutes and 25 seconds, and 21 seconds total for chloroform, correct?
Well, those are the times that were seeded in the computer. I can't explain how often, or excuse me, how much time was actually spent reviewing the page.
But before the next page was selected.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, let's also keep in mind that we're talking about Firefox, and I have no knowledge about any other browsers or other programs that may be on the computer.
I'm sorry?
I have no other knowledge about other other cache or history analysis, other browsers. Windows, for instance, comes by default with Internet Explorer. Many people in my experience have used more than one browser. We're talking about Firefox all by itself.
I understand. So what you're saying is that someone could be, of course, looking at multiple browsers, and that would even lessen the time that you're talking about.
Yes.
Brilliant. It would even lessen the time. In other words, 9 seconds, 11 seconds, the minimal amount of time spent on those pages for chloroform. And he just offered that up. It was unsolicited that if they had other browsers open, it means they were looking at it for even less than that, even though it was already so minimal. Incredible.
There's many explanations.
And we're really talking just a little bit over 3 minutes of time
Wow.
before in total, are we not?
Total.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And you were only given the computer, well, let me ask you this.
Excuse me.
As far as how many months were you asked to look at as far as the computer's concerned?
I was only asked to try and decode it, and in that process, I did my own attempts to validate a cursory review that everything was at least properly decoded. I went so far as to confirm that chloroform did exist, and in that process, I had other items of interest that came to the forefront. Beyond that, I was not asked to do any continued review or experiments or so forth.
So the only dates range that you were looking at is the month of March?
Me looking at it in the month of March?
Yes.
I
Or
never
you
looked at
weren't
the-
even given the whole,
I didn't look at it in the month of March.
okay.
I looked at the data, December 2009, and in preparation for my testimony this week, I have since reviewed what I disclosed to the Orange County Sheriff's Office through Sergeant Stanger.
So you weren't even given the full month of March as to all of the computer activity
Oh, boy.
to look at?
That is correct. All I have is what I worked with.
Okay. And so you can't even testify to this jury, out of this 3 minutes, how much time was actually used on that computer on the internet?
That is correct.
So if there's 50 hours or 250 hours, you can't really put into context how much that 3 minutes is in relation to how often not only one user, but multiple users were on the internet.
I think that is incorrect. I think what the history represents is a chronology of events that took place with the Firefox browser, period. Some items appear to be definitively a user-generated action. Some appear to be stuff that's happened in the background. To that extent, I can't disagree that this did not happen. Beyond that, I can't say how much time was spent using Firefox to look at an item any more than I can say whether other evidence exists in the case that I have not been privy to.
No one's saying that this didn't happen. What I'm saying is that if you take into consideration Firefox, Internet Explorer, Netscape, and the Safari browsers that were on this computer,
Chrome didn't exist yet.
you can't put into context how this 3 minutes is in compared to how many hours were on the computer during the month of March.
That's correct.
Okay. And in fact, this could be a very minuscule period of time compared to how much internet activity was actually done on this computer during the month of March.
Anything other than this history.
Sustain.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I appreciate it.
Any redirect?
All right, Mr. Bradley, starting off with the beginning of your cross-examination, the issue that Sergeant Stenger ran into was with decoding the deleted history from the Firefox browser, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. Why was he unable to complete that decoding, in your opinion?
There was scarce documentation available, and there was no tools in the industry available to do that.
All right. So when you were provided with this information, you were...
It's so funny because with all the other issues, I'd forgotten that the whole cross started with the fact that his software was faulty. But you know what, and the jury probably did too, but you know what she's just done? She's just reminded the jury that on top of all of that, his software was faulty. Well done, Miss Drane-Burdick.
Were able to utilize the tool that you had already developed and add whatever other knowledge you had to complete the decoding of the entire history.
Yes, correct.
Is that correct? Okay, and you said that this event where you worked till 3 in the morning to complete that decoding took place in December of 2009?
I believe so, yes.
Were you familiar with the fact that the events in question took place in June and July of 2008?
I don't recall the date parameters except that it happened quite some time ago.
You had indicated that a lot of websites are dynamic, they're not static, they change very rapidly over time.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Would you include an 18-month time span within that time frame of having websites change dramatically?
Yes, websites would change in that time period.
Now, when Mr. Baez was going through the amount of time spent at each site, 7 seconds may be all it takes to type the word chloroform into the Google search engine?
Well, yes, that's possible, but I think in the context of Mr. Baez's suggestion, the search had already been committed and the results were 7 seconds later.
Okay. So you type in the word, you hit search, and then it returns a result within a certain brief period of time.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you have options. do you not, whenever you put a search term into Google?
Yes?
Okay. And then the user selects options based on what Google returns.
That's correct.
Would it be fair to characterize this block of history, of internet history, as surfing the web for information about weapons and chloroform, how to make chloroform, those types of things?
Yes?
And when someone types in to a search engine how to make chloroform, maybe they're trying to figure out how to make chloroform.
Objection, Judge. Calls for speculation and leading.
Sustain.
Now, when you're dealing with Wikipedia, all of the, I think you called them hyperlinks,
Yes?
don't necessarily keep you on the Wikipedia page, do they?
They tend to, but not always.
Okay. Can it redirect you to another page if you click on a link and Wikipedia might not have that information, but another website might have it?
Yes, absolutely.
And certainly you cannot tell from the internet history that you examined whether or not items were printed off of the internet for later review.
That's correct.
Can the content...
Grasping at straws. Because of the fact that that so little time was spent on those Wikipedia pages for chloroform and whatnot, that she's like, well, maybe, dude, the suggestion that it was printed. And so to try to salvage it, right? Because it seems so like clearly that person wasn't really reading the thing, but like, oh, well, maybe they printed it. Wow.
Of any of the websites be derived from the internet history data that you discovered?
Can you rephrase or repeat the question, please?
There was some inquiry about what was actually displayed on the website at the time the search was made.
Right.
And you said the passage of time affects how that appears,
Yes?
how the website would appear. Can you tell from the internet history exactly what would have appeared on the website when you're looking at that history 18 months later?
No, I cannot.
Were you asked only to review this deleted history to decode it
Yes.
and to tell us, and ultimately the jury, what searches were performed for a particular time frame?
Yes, but I wasn't given any time parameters. I was just simply instructed to decode the entire file with some emphasis on a particular keyword.
The searches on 321 as a whole, from the first one that you mentioned to the last one that we talked about dealing with weapons and things like that, that whole time frame encompassed an hour, correct?
I believe so.
Entry number 3, the www.scispot.com chemistry/chloroform. How many times was that site visited?
According to the history, 84 times.
Thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Brief cross as to those issues and those issues alone.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Excuse me.
I'd like to show you your, that's a copy of a report you submitted in this case, sir?
This is not a report that I submitted, but it's a report that appears to be created by somebody else.
Okay. And the site for scispot.com, how many times does it show that it was visited?
Could you assist me, please, in locating this?
Is that somebody else's report, sir, or is that your report?
It appears to be someone else's, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
May I get that?
Certainly.
Does this appear to be a CacheBack report?
Yes, sir.
There are only one visit to scispot.com, isn't it correct?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the time is now approximately 7 minutes to the hour 5. We will recess for the evening. I'm going to ask that you not to discuss this case among yourselves nor with anyone else. Any additional instructions on behalf of the state or the defense?
Nothing from the defense. Thank you.
You may begin your recross.
May it please the court, Mr. Drane-Burdick. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Mr. Bradley, we left off yesterday discussing the internet history that you were researching, and I want to kind of catch up so I could pick up where Mr. Drane-Burdick left off. Now, you had testified that you had the headers and footers of the entire history. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what that means for us non-computer people is that you believe you captured the whole thing.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So the entire history, internet history from March 1st, was it?
I don't recall the start date of the actual history.
Basically the month of March.
I believe I recall mostly March being part of that.
Okay. And you were asked to do this because Orange County had run a net analysis.
Objection outside the scope. Redirect.
I don't believe it's outside the scope, Judge.
Overrule at this point.
Orange County had run a net analysis on that. That's a different software, right?
Yes, and my understanding is that it was not able to parse the file.
Okay. And your software that you developed is a competing software to that one, right?
In so far as the history component is, that could be perceived as the case, yes.
And were you given the 8,877 files in individual internet history records from the net analysis?
I'm not aware. This is the first time I'm hearing about quantities relating to history files.
Okay. But you were given, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was only provided one file, which was the deleted Firefox 2 history.
Okay. And you were only able to find 8,557. Is that correct?
If that's the number you have, I'm not going to disagree with it.
Okay. Do you have your report? I want to make sure we're all accurate.
I do not have a report here with me.
Okay. If I showed you a copy of your report, would that help you refresh your recollection?
Don't worry, I have
I
it.
believe so. Is it authored by me?
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
The fact that it says, I believe so, sir. You're saying that? Are you saying your report's not trustworthy? Like what the fuck?
Sir.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
He's refreshed.
Now, yesterday when you mentioned the 84 visits to the scispot.com,
There you go,
you
Candace.
don't have
What you gonna say?
84 URLs in your internet history, do you, sir?
That's correct.
So what you only have are the two that was mentioned in your printout.
The two
scispot.com.
I'm confused as to which report you're referring to.
Oh boy.
Your internet history, the report
I know,
admitted
right?
into evidence.
Crazy.
We were looking at two reports yesterday, so
He's addressing the
If
84.
I may approach the witness, Your Honor, I'd like to
visits.
show him states evidence 166.
It's insane that he
You
didn't.
may.
It's insane that he
Assuming,
didn't
sir,
before, and then it's also insane that he was like, when he was like, well, let's refresh your recollection, and he's like, I believe so. Did I author it? Like what?
the report for March 21st.
first, and this report was created by someone else on June 3rd. I agree that it is a report by my software, but I did not create that report.
So you didn't perform this report at all,
That's correct.
and you can't make any representations as to the validity of a report that you did not prepare.
Well, that would be correct. I can only speak to so far as what the format appears. I recognize the report format.
And as far as what you saw in this internet history, all that you have testified to, or all that you can testify to, are the actual URL links that you have viewed as a result of the work you did.
That's correct.
Which do not include 84 hits to the size spot for chloroform, which do not include 84 URL visits to the SciSpot.com.
I should explain that a history keeps track of how many times you visit in the form of a counter. You would not expect to find 84 separate instances of a URL or web record. Each record maintains its own counter. Does that answer the question?
But you would see if it was visited on March 2nd, correct?
It only maintains the last visited timestamp. So there could be a number of times a particular website was visited, and it only maintains the last time it was visited and increments the counter for each time it's visited.
And each time the page refreshes,
That is correct.
it would hit again, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you don't know how often this page refreshes itself, do you, sir?
I could speculate.
Okay.
Now, we don't want you to speculate, sir. You can't testify to that, can you, sir?
That's correct.
And
Right.
that would, of course, depend on the page itself and what is set up
And
by
this matters because remember, what's so interesting is the 84 times, right? Keep in mind that even with the 84 times and then everything else that's related to chloroform, they did the math and the total time with all of it was like 2 minutes and 25 seconds or something like that. So we're talking like 1 second, 2 seconds or whatever for each time. So it does what he's saying here about how that's a good point, right? Like how I see this all the time when I'm using Firefox, where I've got different tabs that are open and they're automatically refreshing even though I didn't do anything. So what he's saying is the fact that they've been the time spent on on that tab or that page is so brief that the 84 times, but yet the URL only happened twice, that it could have just been the tab refreshing itself. So that makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
the website, correct?
That is correct.
Ms. Drane had brought up to you about the pages not being shown to the jury because...
This is why it matters, right? And this is why they always have that saying, the truth comes out in cross-examination, right? Because it's like the state wouldn't say that, they're going to hide, they're going to keep stuff like that out. It's just, and it sucks, right? I wish that we had a system where the state would present all of the evidence, and not omit things that completely, like if you've got a solid case and you don't have, if you've got a solid case, you wouldn't be afraid of things, just like how they didn't, she didn't ask Deputy Forgey, like she didn't ask him on direct, like about the time when his dog didn't alert or didn't alert at the crime scene where the body was, didn't alert there, or there was a false alert this day and then the next day it was there. Like all that came out on cross. And it's like, if you truly believed in the validity of those canine searches, no offense, of course, to the canines, it's not their fault. But like, if you truly believed in the accuracy of it, you wouldn't have any reason to leave that stuff out,
you had gotten the file much later, correct?
When you refer to files, can you clarify?
The internet history files, you were brought in 9 months later.
Yes, insofar as what they represented, that's correct.
But you're aware that Miss Anthony voluntarily gave her computer on July 16, 2008, are you not, sir?
Outside the scope of direct and
Sustained.
irrelevant.
Judge, I don't believe it's outside the scope. It was brought up
Sustained.
really. There are no other internet searches that have anything to do with chloroform in April 2008, May 2008, June 2008, or July 2008.
It wasn't outside the scope because she brought up on redirect, she tried to say it was 18 months or something that had elapsed. And he was trying to go back and say, well, it was actually 9 months. And so I don't know why that was sustained. But, well, I guess I do know why, because that tends to be the case when the state objects in this trial.
Redirect.
Overruled.
Insofar as the data that I looked at, I don't recall anything outside the month of March.
Okay. So all of those months, there's not a thing having to do with chloroform.
Correct.
Ms. Drane-Burdick had also mentioned that there is nothing preventing, well, let me rephrase that. Ms. Drane had mentioned to you about printing out pages. Do you recall that line of questioning?
I do recall the question.
But you can't speculate as to whether a person printed out any of these pages, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah,
in fact, you have no evidence that any pages were printed out.
Stupid.
That's true.
Unless, of course, the printer leaves an artifact on the computer, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And none of that was recovered. There's no artifacts in the computer having to do with any printing for chloroform, correct?
I can't speak to what was found or not found on the computer. My scope in this matter relates to strictly the data.
Understood. And Orange County, when they consulted with you on this case, never told you that during the multiple searches that they did of that house, that they never recovered any pages having anything to do with chloroform, did they, sir?
Outside the scope of direct, irrelevant, based on hearsay information.
It's sustained.
May I respond, Judge? It's not outside the scope.
Sustained. That's the hearsay.
When you were given the data for this case, did it include any printed out pages having to do with chloroform
No,
from
sir.
the Anthony computer?
No, sir.
And as part of the file that you were given, or that you're aware of, there are no pages of having to do with anything to do with chloroform, are there, sir?
Well, this is a history file, so I wouldn't expect something tangible to relate to data. In this case here, I only had a historical record of what transpired.
I'm referring to any materials given to you by law enforcement.
That's correct. I had no other information but the data file.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Any additional questions, Ms. Burdick?
Mr. Bradley, the data file that you were given encompassed a period of time from March 6th through March 21st, correct?
Yes,
And that's all that you were asked to look at?
that is correct.
Okay. On the issue of the tabs, will the counter only refresh if the tab is active, meaning that it's being viewed or it's open on the computer?
There are a couple of things that impact how a page is refreshed. Number one, is there something within the actual...
I can say that, like, in Firefox is now versus then, who knows? But I use Firefox, and I always have a lot of tabs open, and I can personally say that if you've got one window with like multiple tabs, that there's tabs that are refreshing and you're not clicking on them, because I see it all the time. You can see that it's refreshing, but I'm not clicking on it. It's just that it's still open in the window, but I'm on a different tab. I can say that from personal experience.
file or the page, there's sometimes code written inside that'll say, please refresh me. For the most part, a page is not refreshed unless the user deliberately asks it to be refreshed.
And as far as the time sequence,
The reason I even notice it is because whenever I'm like editing stuff for YouTube, for example, when I'm doing timestamps and it's really long in the description box, right? And I'll leave the tab open where I left off, which is like scrolled all the way down. And then I might be on a different tab or be away from the computer or whatever. And like, I'll come back and then that tab has refreshed. And the way I know that is because it's scrolled all the way back to the top of the description. And I'm like, oh, I have to scroll all the way back down. Like, just as an example, like, just so, yeah.
consequences that were just alluded to. If somebody is on the computer and the tab is active, even if another window is open, will the internet history show the next window and then the one tab will remain active?
Yes, that's correct.
I think she understands what a tab versus a window is.
You can visit a page on the internet on one tab, and if you select a hyperlink or an option on that page in Firefox 2, it will default to a new tab while keeping the other tab open until such time that it is actually closed.
So any succession on the internet history does not necessarily mean that the first tab was closed and a new tab opened.
That is correct.
Why does that help you? You're just proving what came out on cross or recross. You're just proving that because that's the point. That the tab stays open, and while it's open, it continues to refresh.
Thank you.
Dude, I can't.
As long as it deals with those areas.
Oh,
Tabs.
The site that we're talking about is a blog, is it not, sir?
I don't know what site we're talking about.
The one that Ms. Drane-Burdick had just mentioned about the size spot.
Not object outside the scope of the government's read.
I don't believe so, Judge.
Sustained.
Anyone can write a blog, can't they, sir?
Sustained.
No further questions.
May the witness be excused. Thank you, sir. You may be excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Look who's back, guys, because everybody testifies 1,000 times each in this trial. Back for more, Lee Anthony.
Lee Anthony, Leeanthony.
You may proceed, Mr. George.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good morning.
So Mr.
Good morning.
George is still alive. So we have not heard from Mr. George in quite some time. And I actually had commented on several previous live streams. I was like, because it doesn't always show the table and it hasn't shown their table. And like, he hasn't taken any witnesses. And I was like, what happened to Mr. George? Because he's my favorite of the prosecutors in this case. And when I say favorite, I mean, I really don't like Mr. Ashton. I really don't like Mr. Drane-Burdick. Mr. George doesn't bother me. And so I was like, well, where's Mr. George? Like, is he sick? Did he die? But anyway, but he's back. So
Mr. Anthony, on July 15th or July 16th of 2008, were you on your family's home computer?
Yes, I was.
What were you doing on the computer?
interesting, right? Because all this about who, incredible that they bring this witness, they bring this in. This is in sequential order, guys. Literally, they didn't even take a break. They finished with him and they bring in Lee Anthony in the first question. And it's like, oh, so he's using the home computer? Fuck.
Doing some internet searching, trying to figure out where Sawgrass Apartments and some other keywords were.
During that time, did you ever delete any of the internet history or the records that were on that computer?
No.
Sir, I want to direct your attention to August of 2008. Was there a time that your sister Casey returned back to the house on Hope Springs Drive?
Yes.
During that time, did you have...
Now, the jury doesn't know this, but I know this, and I wouldn't have known it were it not for the Orange County Sheriff's Investigative Report that I just read, because I learned in that report on August 21st, I believe it was, she was she was let out. So initially she was like, she'd been brought in that time and put in custody. It was for like, it was for the bad checks or something like that, or money from Amy Huizinga, something like that, I believe. Anyway, but she was out. She came home briefly. I think she was only there for like 7 days. I believe on the 28th is when the grand jury returned the indictment for murder. So she wasn't back for long, but he didn't ask. He just said, did she return home? And the jury doesn't know where she returned home from. She returned home from jail and she was out on bond briefly. And then, as you guys probably know, like when they brought on the additional charges for murder and whatnot, her family didn't even actually try to get her out.
The opportunity to have private conversations with her?
Yes, I did.
During one of these conversations, did your sister tell you a different version of how Caylee was taken from her?
Yes, she did.
Can you please tell the jury what she told you during this conversation?
She told me that she met Zanny, who was her nanny, as well as Zanny's sister and her children
Samantha.
at J. Blanchard Park, which is here in Orlando. And during that meeting, Zanny held Casey down and told her that she was taking Caylee from her, and she did that with the help of her sister.
Did your sister describe to you how she was held down?
Yeah, from what I recall, she was held like on her wrists. And she was held down. They were both supposedly sitting on like a park bench or something like that, and then she was held down.
Did your sister tell you why Caylee was taken from her?
I believe she did. I don't recall exactly what she told me.
Okay. Do you recall giving a deposition back on July 30th of 2009?
Yes.
Do you remember being asked the circumstances surrounding the taking and being asked that particular question?
Yes.
Do you remember what your response was?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. For court and counsel, I'm referring to the deposition of July 30th, 2009, page 279.
So I'm pausing real quick for something. Let me share my screen because Zanny came up. So here we go. So here's the thing. I wanted to show you, for anyone that missed it when we went through this, we learned something crazy about Zanny. And I have it highlighted, so it shouldn't take me long to find it. Okay, here's the first part. While Casey was with Detective Wells, I called. Oh, wait, no, I need to go before this. Hold on, that's part 2 of the Zanny news. Where is it? Hold on just a sec, guys. I'll find it here. Aha, I didn't highlight it. Let me go ahead and highlight it so that it's here. So they found, and we had heard this came up in the trial, but we didn't know what the result of this. So they found a Zenaida Gonzalez who had come to look at an apartment on June 17th. She filled out a guest card, right? So there we go. So here's the thing. So when I was going over this, I was like, holy crap, because this came up when Yuri Melich was on the stand. So when they were doing this, looking into Zanny and looking into Sawgrass Farms, they found a Zenaida Gonzalez who'd come in and filled out a guest card. Now, she didn't live there, which is fine. But the fact that there is a person with that name and that they had some connection to Sawgrass Apartments is wild, right? They filled out a guest card and it had a phone number, right? Now, here's why this is crazy, because I was like thinking to myself, is this where she came up with this name, right? Because the date would matter. Because remember, she had been talking about Zanny with the full name for years, like for at least 2 years or 2.5 years before Caylee went missing. So this would have had to have happened before then, before 2006, in order for it to be like, oh, maybe she was visiting Sawgrass, right? Because we know that's where her boyfriend lived, and maybe she saw that name on a guest. I mean, that's just was one of my thoughts. It's like, where did she come up with this crazy name? Because what are the odds that somebody actually has that name, right? So then when I was going over this, I was like, oh my God, did they call the cell phone number? Well, they did. Because I was like, is this the real person? Is that a fake cell phone number, right? Because again, it's totally plausible that Casey could have, I don't know, had done that, right? But check it out. This is what's wild. What are the odds of this, guys? While Casey was with Detective Wells, I called the Zenaida Gonzalez identified from the Sawgrass Apartments. She was open in responses, and when asked, denied knowing Casey or anyone babysitting at all. She agreed to meet with an investigator to give, I should highlight this too, because this means they actually met her. It wasn't somebody else pretending. They met with her. So she never knew Caylee or Casey or any of that. But the fact that what's crazy to me is that this was a real person who filled out a guest card and had, like, this person exists. Isn't that insane? Like, what are the odds? And she filled out a guest card on June 17th, 2008, which is right after the last time anybody saw Caylee. So this was recent. And again, Casey had been using this name for years prior. But just the fact that, like, what are the odds? Is this a common name? I don't know. It's wild. But I just wanted to point that out, that, like, there is a real Zenaida Gonzalez. She exists. And the odds that she went to the Sawgrass Apartments and filled out a guest card, it's just crazy, right? So anyway, all right, back to the video.
Lines 1 through 25. Your Honor, I'm bringing it up on the screen now for the witness and for the specifically, I'm going to be referring to lines 17 through 25, and on page 280, which I'll put up in a minute, lines 1 through 4. Mr. Anthony, if you would take a look at lines 17 through 25. And just let me know when you're done.
I'm finished with that part.
Okay. And again, sir, I'll ask you to read lines 1 through 3. Okay.
So let's see if we can read that. So have Caylee, and it's, you don't wait to find out that you told somebody something. Okay.
All right. Mr. Anthony, what was, does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
Okay. What did your sister tell you the reason for Caylee being taken was?
In Zanny's opinion, Casey was not being a good mother to Caylee, or wouldn't be a good mother for Caylee. And she was taking Caylee from her to teach her a lesson, and also told her not to go to the police or anything like that.
Did she also give you a description, a detailed description of what Zenaida Gonzalez looked like?
Yes, she did. She was kind of normal height, about 5'8", 5'10"-ish. Good complexion, long hair, of Spanish. It's about what I recall.
Just to be clear, do you recall being asked that question and giving an answer during that same deposition?
Yes.
Would looking at that answer, the answer that you gave back in July 2009, refresh your memory?
Absolutely.
He doesn't use memory refresh. He just said he gave an answer. He didn't say he didn't remember. He answered it. So you're impeaching him. You're not refreshing him.
For court and counsel, and I'll be bringing up, I'm referring to page 280, lines 15 to 21.
Yes.
Okay. Take a look at that, Mr. Anthony.
Typically shoulder length. Okay, so it says she's dark hair, typically shoulder length. She's around 100 pounds or so. Tends to be like a darker complexion. Whether she goes to tanning beds or not, I don't know. But very, very attractive, no glasses or no wooden leg or anything like that. That's funny.
Okay.
Okay.
No wooden leg. Got it.
I believe you touched on some of those things, but you recall saying giving some other description or your sister giving you some other descriptions of what this Zenaida person.
I believe the witnesses said that this has refreshed his recollection.
There it is. He did catch it. He was just a little bit late. That's right. I just pointed that out. Keep reading, Chelsea, as they say. Yeah, he didn't say he didn't remember. He answered it like he remembered. So yeah, correct.
After reading that, Mr. Anthony, has your memory been refreshed as to all of the details that your sister gave you in terms of a description of Zenaida?
All the details that I said there, yes.
Okay. What did she tell you?
What I'd missed there was she was approximately 100 pounds, and that she would keep it darker complexion, like tanning or something like that.
Now, did your sister also tell you what she was doing or what she saw as Caylee was being taken from her?
I don't recall exactly what I said now.
Now you can refresh him.
Do you recall giving another deposition on February 27th of 2009?
Yes.
Do you recall that question being asked of you, your sister's reaction to Caylee being taken away, and what your response was?
I don't remember what my response was.
If I showed you that, would that refresh your memory?
Yes, it would.
For court and counsel, and I'll be putting it up on the screen, I'm referring to the deposition taken on February 20.
For anyone who missed it too, another thing we learned a lot from this Orange County Sheriff's Office investigative report, because a lot of it hasn't come in at trial, may not come in, may come in at some point, just, but one of the things that was crazy was the choking, the strangling. So there were several accounts from people who knew Lee, and Lee had told them that there was an incident that he was present for, or no, wait, either he was present for it or Cindy told him. But what's crazy is that what happens is Cindy tried to strangle Casey, and it sounds like, either it sounds like maybe Cindy told Lee this, which would be crazy, right? Or Lee would have been there, but it was in that report, and Lee told several different people this, and essentially that's just one example. There were other examples that pointed to where Cindy sounds like she has a pretty violent temper. And some of that has come in at the trial. Like we've already heard examples of that. For example, the employees being afraid of her at the Johnson's record place, and other things. But that hasn't come in yet. Now, it'll be interesting to see if that does come up. I believe the defense is going to probably call George and Cindy. I'm really excited for their case in chief. There's going to be a lot.
there's a lot that the state's not bringing in. Again, they don't get out ahead of anything. They don't get ahead of anything with their witnesses, but also they're not getting out ahead of potentially exculpatory evidence for Casey. Like they're not bringing, and then, I mean, they have to turn it over, right? But they don't have to bring it in. And then also things that actually are like really damning for George and Cindy or Lee. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that for anyone who hasn't watched those live streams yet. There was an incident where Cindy strangled Casey, and it sounds like maybe Lee found Cindy with her hands around Casey's neck or something like that. So yeah.
7th of 2009, I'm specifically referring to page 101, lines 1 through, page 104, lines 15 through 19.
Casey said that she was so shocked at what was happening that she didn't know how to react. It was surreal.
You had a chance to read that, Mr. Anthony?
Yes, I did.
All right. Did that refresh your memory as to what your sister told you about her reaction to her daughter being taken from her?
Why is this helpful? All it says is she didn't know how to react.
Her reaction, maybe you'd ask what she had saw.
Okay. What was that?
What she saw?
Her reaction.
Her reaction for that was that she couldn't believe it was happening, and it felt kind of like surreal to her.
Did she indicate that she did any?
I don't know how this helps the state. It would be surreal, right? If we know this didn't happen, but if it did happen, it would seem surreal.
Anything to stop Zinaida from taking her daughter?
She did not.
Did she tell you why she didn't do anything?
She said
that she was scared and she didn't know what to do.
After Caylee was taken from her, did your sister indicate to you that this Zinaida person was controlling her movements or telling her what to do?
She did tell me that, yes.
Any more specific than that? In what way?
Specifically through MySpace at the time, that she had Casey's password and would send her, like you can kind of send yourself a message or post something so only you could see it on your account. She would do things like that to kind of instruct her on what to do, where to go, things like that.
And did she indicate that she would go to these places that Zinaida told her to go?
She did.
Did she tell you why she did that?
To hope to see Caylee, to hope to fulfill whatever obligations were being set upon her.
You had mentioned during your last response about MySpace and also Facebook.
I don't remember Facebook specifically. I know MySpace was just bigger at the time.
Do you know what Timer 55 is?
It was a password that Casey had specifically for MySpace.
Did you ask her what Timer 55 meant?
I did.
Do you recall what her explanation of what Timer 55 meant?
Her first explanation was she did not create the password, but her feeling expressed to me on what it was. Her explanation was that from the date Caylee was taken from her until Caylee's birthday on August 9th, that there were 55 calendar days within that period of time, and it was her understanding that, or maybe her hope or belief, that she was going to get her back on that day. But that's all she really had to share with me.
All right, so day one would be June 16th.
What's interesting about that is that in those video jail visits, when George is visiting with Casey, this is when it's just George only, not George and Cindy, just George. Do you guys remember how weird it was when George made such a big deal about, he was like, you know what it is? There's a big day happening in a week. And it was like weird because it was like, what? And it was like not even actually a week. It was like 8 days or something. And it was like, it's going to be a big day. It's Caylee's birthday. And he brought it up several times. George did. And he brought it up several times. And he kept saying that he was already like making plans for what they were going to do for her birthday. And he was like, kept saying like, I hope she's back by her birthday. We want to have a big party. And he went and said he wanted to have a cake, ice cream. And he said it weird like that, ice cream. Anyway, I just remember it specifically because it was so crazy and so surreal. Like speaking of surreal, right? Like he
George kept talking about the birthday and her being back by the birthday and shit like that, and how and what he wanted, the presents he wanted to get for her. So this is interesting.
And date 55 would be August 9th.
Correct.
You indicated in your answer that she told you that she did not create this password.
That is what she told me, yes.
Did she tell you who did create this password?
She told me that Zenaida did.
Did she tell you how Zenaida was able to change her old password to her new one?
I would imagine she would have had her old one.
But you don't know how?
I don't know. I don't know the specifics.
Okay. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Mr. Anthony.
Good morning.
So if I understand your testimony correctly, your sister told you another story about the imaginary Zanny the nanny?
Right, exactly. This is pointless.
Yes, she told me another story about Zanny the nanny, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's pointing out what is obvious to me, and probably the jury, which is it's no one like ever. It's understood at this point in the trial there is no Zanny the nanny, right? That it's made up. That's made very clear. There's all these imaginary friends, as he's called them, and so the fact that they're like, oh, she told you a different story about Zanny. It's like, so.
And she told you that that Zanny the nanny would contact her through MySpace.
Yes, she did.
And that she would tell her what to do, how to control her, so she didn't call the police.
Correct.
And maybe like go places.
Correct.
So maybe she could see Caylee.
Sure, yes.
And was this like going to phone booths and things like that, or different locations to be able to try and find Zanny the nanny? Or was there any more detail other than that?
I don't believe we got into detail on exactly where she would go, but I would imagine it was like stores and, places like that.
And she would go to these stores and do what?
Outside the scope and cause for speculation.
If Mr. Anthony knows based upon what his sister said, objection overruled.
Look for Caylee, walk around.
And none of these MySpace, imaginary MySpace posts.
By the way, for anyone also who missed it, in the Orange County Sheriff's Office investigative report, we learned that we knew from the trial, outside the presence of the jury, but we during like a proffer, we know that we heard from Tony Lazaro that Casey had said to him that Lee, her brother, right, had tried to SA her, right? But so far, that was the only person we'd heard that from. In the Orange County Sheriff's Office investigative report, we heard that from somebody else. I believe it was Jesse Grund. He gave a statement and it's in that report that that he also had been told that, and it was very similar story. It was actually like identical. It was like that he like kind of tried to pressure her to have sex or tried to SA her or something like that, that it didn't happen, but that he tried to, and I think on more than one occasion. And also there was another witness who had testified about George Anthony having abused her, Casey, as a kid as well. So again, these are witnesses that the state hasn't called yet. Will they? I don't know. Or maybe the defense will call them. We'll see.
To find this imaginary Zanny ever panned out for her, did it?
Goes beyond the witness's knowledge and cause for speculation.
His face.
Overruled unless that was told to you by Miss Anthony. You're not the yes about what you think, but only what she told you about that limited subject.
Casey was never successful in finding Caylee in any of those
We know.
experiences.
We know.
And Zanny the nanny never materialized.
To this day, no.
Thank you, sir.
Although there is a Zenaida Gonzalez, which is weird.
I have no further questions, John.
Okay, witness may be excused. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I will read you the following stipulation between the state and the defense.
All right, so I believe this is the last part of this episode. So this is the 911 call from the Orange County utility dispatcher who found Caylee's remains.
On December 11th, 2008, the Orange County Utility Dispatcher made a recorded call to 911 that was received by the Orange County Sheriff's Office at 9:31.02 hours. The recording is a true and accurate representation of the call. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations. You may proceed.
Yes, this is Orange County Utilities Emergency Dispatch. We found a human skull.
Oh my gosh.
I know. We got is it a meter reader? Yes. I'm going to let you speak right now with the representative from our field services. This is Benny with Orange County Utilities.
Hey, Benny.
Hi. I'm going to let you speak with Rusty Spare, and everything is recorded. Here he is.
How are you doing?
Hey, Rusty.
One of my meter readers supposedly has found a skull of that he believes is human.
What's the location, please?
It's right off of Suburban and Chickasaw in the Kelly Anthony area, right by the
school. Do you have a specific address for me or not?
No, it's right by the school. If you take it,
you are.
Yeah, he's
Suburban and Goldenwood?
Well, Suburban and Chickasaw.
Chickasaw, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the school is right there. I can't think of the name of the school. It just go right straight down. It dead ends right into the woods.
Okay.
It'll be on the east side of Chickasaw, Suburban.
East side of Chickasaw. And what is your party's name that we're going to meet with?
His name is Roy, R-O-Y, Kronk, K-R-O-N-K.
He's not touching this, I hope.
No,
K-R-O-N-K. And he's a
meter reader.
Meter reader?
Yeah, and I'll just tell him to stay at that location and just stay away from everything.
Okay. And if you can, try to stress to him to please not draw attention to the area.
Yeah, okay.
And that would be great, just in case it is something. It may be nothing, but just in case.
Yes.
And you're from what department?
Utilities Customer Service.
Utilities.
And if you need any information, my phone number is 407-254-9751.
9751?
Yes.
Okay, Rusty, I'm going to go ahead and send a call up for a deputy to meet with him.
Okay.
And we'll see you there very shortly. What type of vehicle is he going to be in?
Probably a Colorado, small Colorado, white. It'll have Orange County. It'll have Orange County insignia on it.
Okay, white Colorado
Chevy
truck.
Colorado. Yes.
And with Orange County markings.
Yes.
Orange County markings. Okay, we'll see you there very shortly, okay?
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
You may continue.
Your Honor, the next witness is Edward Turso.
Edward Turso. Last name is Turso.
You may proceed.
Thank you. How are you employed, sir?
With the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
In what capacity?
Deputy.
Are you assigned to a patrol division?
Yes, Sector 2.
Were you assigned to the patrol division in Sector 2 back on December 11th, 2008?
I was.
On that date, did you respond to a call that was received by the Orange County Sheriff on Suburban Drive?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall, or do the records of the Orange County Sheriff reflect the time of your arrival at that location?
I don't recall the time, but off the top of my head, it was very early in the morning.
You may.
Thank you.
Tell me if you recognize the document that I've just shown you.
Yes, it's my supplement, my report.
That is something authored by you
Yes.
at or near the time of the event that we're discussing?
Yes.
Does
Says,
that refresh your recollection as to the time that you responded to this call on Suburban Drive on December 11th of 2008?
Yes, 9:32.
9:32 a.m.?
Yes.
Describe this location if you would.
It was an intersection. To the right was very wooded area.
Did you meet there with an individual that was identified to you as Roy Kronk?
Yes, I did.
Did Mr. Kronk take you anywhere?
Yes, he took me into the woods.
How did that happen? Tell the members of the jury what happened
What I
once
did
you
was-
arrived.
I identified myself with Mr. Crump. I asked him how could I help him? He had previously called 911. He told me he had to go relieve himself in the woods and found what he believed was a skull.
Did you go into the woods with him then?
Yes, I asked him, show me.
Okay. Did he go in first?
He led me in, yes.
Did you follow?
Yes, I was right behind him, following him all the way to we actually passed the bag and skull.
Okay. Were you able to backtrack and locate the item that he had called about?
Yes, once we passed it, I would say 5-10 feet, stopped. He looked around, wondered what had happened. He looks over my shoulder, and there is the site that he was referring to.
Okay. What did you do at that point?
I walked over to it. I stood over the skull, looked at it, and we left the area right away.
Did you touch it in any fashion?
Not at all.
Did Mr. Kronk touch it in your presence?
Not at all.
What action did you take once you left the woods?
Once we left the woods, I had him go back to his car. I called my sergeant. I started Mr. Kronk on a statement of written what had happened, and we roped off the area with crime scene tape.
Did you stay there until the arrival of other deputies and supervisors who then took over control of that scene?
Yes, ma'am.
I have no other questions of the witness. Thank you, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Did Mr. Kronk advise you that he had called 3 times in August?
No, he did not.
Oh boy.
Sustain.
Were you made aware of any prior calls by this individual in August of 2008?
Sustain.
Did you have any conversations with Mr. Kronk about where you advised him that he should not say anything about calling 3 times in August of 2008?
Sustain. Move to another line of questioning called the hearsay answers.
How far did you go into the woods?
Ballpark, 20 feet or so.
And that's when you passed where the skull was, correct?
No, I'd say it was about 20 feet. I mean, I'm just going off the top of my head. I didn't measure it out or anything like that.
Okay. 20 feet from the street?
More or less.
Okay. And there's also a weed line, is there not?
What do you mean a weed line?
I knew that was going to be a tough question to answer. What I mean is there's grass that is mowed before you get into the area that's wooded, correct?
I don't think there was. All I remember is a wooded area.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing a mowed section previously.
You just don't recall, or you're certain that there was?
I don't remember if there was a cleared path prior to the woods.
Okay. And when you came back, how far did you pass into the woods before you came back?
When we passed the site?
Yes.
I'd say we passed it by probably about 5 feet or so. When he turned around, he was looking a little bit confused, like where to go. And then he turned and looked at me and pretty much over my shoulder said, "Oh, there it is."
And next to the skull, there was a fallen tree, correct?
There was a lot of vegetation. I couldn't tell you exactly if there was a fallen tree right next to the skull.
And there was also a white bag.
A white bag?
Do you recall seeing a white canvas bag?
No.
Do you recall seeing a bright red bag next to it?
I focused on the skull and the garbage bag that was next to it.
Okay. Deputy Terso, you directed Mr. Kronk to his car.
Correct.
And then you directed him to write a statement.
Yes.
Did you give him any other directions other than those 2 things?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure what you're asking me. Did I ask him? I told him, here's a statement form. Tell me, write down what you told me, write it down.
But did you give him any other instructions as a police officer as what to do or what not to do?
Not that's coming to mind right now.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. May the deputy be excused for today, but not excused from his subpoena.
Yes, sir. Subject to recall.
Okay. All right, Deputy.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the pool camera is hereby instructed to blur or pixelate the portion of any photograph that contains skull. And that is also the same instruction for the pool photographer. So if you can blur it out, pixelate it, then that's fine.
They end up not showing it.
No one else, including any journalists, will use a cell phone or any other electronic device to try to capture a photograph. The other rules about no one else pulling from the general audience, pulling out cell phones, cameras, or anything, those will be immediately confiscated by the court deputies. All right, let's return to jury.
All right, that's it for this one, guys. To be continued. So, so we're leaving off here with the conclusion of all the computer stuff, right, and getting into the crime scene, the recovery of the remains, and all of that, right. So that will be on the next video. Now, I will say that while it is, it's always difficult when it gets to these things. What I will say from everything that I've put together so far, like I said, they don't show. Like he said that they can just blur out certain things. They don't show those pictures. They opt not to, which is great, right? They're only going to show things like clothing items or like the bat, like they're not showing anything with the body. So you don't have to worry about that for anyone who is, who's concerned, rightfully so. Because sometimes certain things are shown, but not here. There's nothing about that. Yeah. So, and so there are, descriptions of things, but so far it's not really anything too graphic in my opinion. In a way it's kind of a good thing, right? Because in some cases where, they will show injuries to the person, right? But that's when the person is still found like kind of intact, right? Like, and they'll show certain injuries. There's none of that here, right? So that's a good thing. Like we're spared, because it's just, from what I understand, these remains are just the bones, right? Because it's been so long, but they don't show it. So, so we don't have to worry about any of that. But there's a lot of interesting things that are going to come out in the next episode. And that's why I was asking this question here, about what do you think the cause of death was? That's the first thing, because there's a lot of questions about what really is what is even the state's theory, right? And then the other thing that's interesting is that, this is the only time I've ever heard of this. They have more than one forensic pathologist. And I might sneeze in a second. No. Okay. Hold on. I think I'm okay. Wait. Okay. I muted my mic just in time for the sneeze. So, they have more than one forensic pathologist. So they call a forensic pathologist and I'm like, oh, great. We're finally going to get to like the autopsy. And it's like, wait, you didn't, what? The state brought in this like celebrity medical examiner. That's how she's called. They brought in a celebrity medical examiner to actually then determine the cause and manner of death. There's like 2 forensic pathologists and a forensic archaeologist. And that's just what I've gone through so far. In other words, they've got like a slew of people that do the job of normally one person. So what does that mean to you? What do you guys think about that? And the other thing that I will say, and that's the reason I have this question on the bottom of the screen here, is we're going to hear the state kind of maybe change their theory of what they think the cause of death was in the middle of trial. And I have to wonder if the reason they're doing that is because they're realizing their initial potential suggestion to the jury wasn't going so well because of the cross-examinations being so solid and tearing it apart. They're going to have to pivot. So it'll be really interesting to see. So that will be up next time on episode 14, which I believe will probably be tomorrow. So, and so for anyone else that missed it too, I did cover all the latest out of Ada County, Coburger documents. I did cover all of that this morning. It's not a long video, but there's some pretty good information in there. So, so feel free to check that out. I'll get timestamps rolling here shortly.
But that's it for this one. So guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a squirrel. If you're new, please feel free to subscribe and join the Squirrel Crew. I'll have Nightbot put the link in the chat for the Discord. We do have a really fun Discord. It's free. It's fun. So hopefully Nightbot will put that link in there for anyone who's new and would like to join the Discord. But we'd love to have you. The Squirrel Crew is awesome. And also, in case you are new as well, for anyone, I do have playlists on my channel for every trial or case that I'm covering or have covered. So they're all, and all the videos should be like in order for each playlist. So, so you feel free to check that out as well. Don't be confused if you see music, because I'm a musician as well. And so I have guitar and violin and stuff too. But again, everything is organized in playlists if it makes it easier for you guys. So, so yeah, thanks so much, friends, for being here. And I'll see you guys next time. Love y'all.